Councillor Stewart.
No, oh yeah, Councillor Stewart. Can I call the meeting to order? I'm just missing one of my councillors. Okay. Just waiting for Councillor Stewart. Okay. Where is he? All right, great. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's Monday, March 24th. The month is flying by. Welcome to the St. John Common Council meeting. And we're going to start our meeting this evening with a land acknowledgement, as we always do every time we meet. And I'm passing it over to Councillor Norton this evening to read the land acknowledgement. So over to you, Councillor, please.
Thank you, Worship. The land on which the city of St. John, Mennequist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and the Pescatomakati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources.
Okay, let us pause for a few moments just to reflect on those words. And I'll ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. More important today, and as we go into the future than ever. Okay, City Clerk, over to you for the next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item is 2.1 on the agenda, approval of minutes of March the 10th.
On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 2.2, approval of minutes of March the 13th.
Councillor Darling and Councillor Harris on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is approval of the agenda, and there are a number of additions. The first one would be added on as item 16.1, and it's a letter from DTI to the mayor regarding Sims Corner project. The next we would add as 9.3.1 as it relates to the public hearing, and it's a request from the proponent to cancel and withdraw the public hearing for Bayside Drive. Next are 4 items from Committee of the Whole recommendations. 17.1 is an agreement related to NB Museum project. 17.2, consent to sublet Reversing Falls Restaurant. 17.3, update to non-union terms and conditions. And 17.4, sale of lot at 311 Sandy Point Road.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Lowe and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Not seeing any. Next item.
Next is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.8, please.
Councillor Sullivan seconding on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is members' comments.
Members' comments. Okay, I don't, Councillor Redwan, over to you for the first members' comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that that residents know about the meeting that'll be held on March the 25th for Heatherway for the sanitary sewer installation. It's going to be taking place at MBCC in Classroom C. It was part of our consent agenda today, and it's Classroom C at NBCC from 7:30 till 8:30. So if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to staff there. I'll be stopping in for that as well. And I just wanted to really say congratulations to Tanya and Daniel, who put on a really great conference. Full transparency, I've given them a little bit of free help over the years with getting their business going, but the Women in Business conference was incredible. They had a really good turnout. And the thing that I always love most about them is they're so passionate about St. John, and they just want to see St. John thrive and grow. And that's part of the reason why they wanted to open their business. So just wanted to say congratulations to them.
Thank you, Councillor. The Empowering Women in Business was a great event. It was over Friday and Saturday, well attended, and lots of great keynote speakers as well. I will just say quickly that the CBC National News is in town tonight. They are filming in St. John. They'll be here till Wednesday, so if you get a chance, watch the National. You can see it all night. It starts up on Channel 13 over and over again, so it'll be all about St. John. So it's pretty interesting to see what's going to be showing up. They're going to be apparently they were going to film down at the stage at Itola Magahamik, but with the weather, I'm not sure that's happening now. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have a proclamation for Purple Day Epilepsy Awareness.
Okay, whereas Purple Day is a global effort dedicated to promoting epilepsy awareness in countries around the world. And whereas epilepsy is one of the most common neurological conditions estimated to affect over 50 million people worldwide, and every year in Canada, 42 people are diagnosed every day. And whereas 1 in 10 persons will have at least one seizure during his or her lifetime, and whereas the public is often unable to recognize common seizure types or how to respond with appropriate first aid, and whereas Purple Day will be celebrated on March 26th annually to increase understanding, reduce stigma, and improve the quality of life for people with epilepsy throughout the country and globally. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim March 26th as Purple Day in the City of St. John in an effort to raise awareness of epilepsy in Canada. Next item, City Clerk.
Well, it's not quite 6:30 yet, so we can't start the public hearing. I would recommend we move forward on the agenda to deal with some of the faster items. So we could move over to item 15.1 under general correspondence.
Okay.
And this is a GBS Foundation of Canada request for proclamation awareness for GBS CIDP Awareness Month, and we have a recommendation that this be referred to the clerk's office to prepare a proclamation.
Deputy and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.2, NB Country Music Hall of Fame request to present, and there's a staff recommendation to refer this matter to the CAO to consult with Envision regarding the sponsorship request.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.3, and it's a letter with a request to present regarding Stone Church, and recommendation is to refer to the CAO to have staff advise the requester of the city grants.
Okay, Deputy and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is a letter from a citizen regarding outdoor play area Ward 2 Milledgeville, and recommendation is to receive for information.
Take a seconder on that. Councillor Darling on the question. Councillor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that staff knows and Mr. Alazib knows. I'm going to actually send a copy of Play SJ to him so that hopefully he's been in the city for a couple of years now, just to make sure that he kind of understands the direction that the city is looking to take with playgrounds.
Good, thank you. Okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is a letter, item 15.5, from a citizen regarding community concerns about the city market, and there's a recommendation to direct the CAO to provide an update on implementation of the city market strategic plan to the growth committee.
Okay,
So moved.
the deputy and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.6, a letter regarding Glen Falls area. Recommendation to direct the CAO to report back with an update regarding Glen Falls flooding as part of the Courtney Bay Causeway raising project.
Okay, Councillor Stewart and the deputy on the question. Councillor Redwan.
Mayor, I just wanted to mention I will be putting an update when this comes to council on my socials and try to get a hold of the person who wrote the letter ahead of time.
Thank you, Councillor. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item would be from the supplemental, and it was item 16.1, and that would be the letter that was sent directly to council from DTI regarding Sims Corner project.
Okay, so I'm going to send that one over to Councillor Norton.
If I could just speak briefly to 16.1 here, just bring up some notes. I would make a motion to 16.1. This is a letter that was received, and appreciate the common clerk adding it to the open session on such short notice and working with the CAO's office. But if I get a seconder here, I would resolve that in response to the March 6, 2025 letter to the mayor from the Deputy Minister of the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, also known as DTI, that DTI be invited to the council meeting of April the 3rd, 2025, to provide Common Council with a briefing on the Sims Corner redesign project.
Councillor Lowe? Yep, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. If there's no questions on it.
Councillor Ogden?
I think most of our lives, those of us who lived in West Side, been promised everything from lights, which didn't work, they lasted one day, to overpasses. And the public's got to realize that because of every time they see another ship and another crane, which is good news, you're going to see longer trains. Sometimes some are saying they're going to be up to 2 miles long, and they're going to be more frequent. And people in West St. John just can't wait anymore. If you live down in Milford, Randolph, Church Avenue, anywhere like that, your lineups are huge. Nobody in the West Side's ever seen it this bad. And I'm glad that now a conceptual idea is coming through, and it's going to take a lot of work, but it's got to be a priority, and it's got to be a priority right away. And when they do decide to build it, it can't be like the Harbor Bridge, which we're now in our 7th year, and then it's going to be next year is 8 years. It's got to be quicker, done at night. And people in West St. John are just totally frustrated with Sims Corner, and it is not the corner that some of us grew up with. The trains are just, there's much more of them, and that's because of the increased industrial capacity of the city, which means we should be a very wealthy city with all the taxes that are coming into St. John. And of course, we don't see the taxes, the industrial tax, but this is good news for the province of New Brunswick. But the people of St. John have to benefit from this, and sitting at Sims Corner every day for 20, 25 minutes is not helping the quality of life of everybody in St. John. So whatever Councillor Norton wants to move on this, I'm fully in support, because we've got to act on this. This is a major problem in the province, and the citizens of St. John are paying for it, and the loss of our taxes. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor. I will just to update the public, I did receive a letter from DTI that said that the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure is committed to a redesign of Sims Corner. And if we would like to have a presentation from them, they're happy to come in and do that. So this is what Councillor Norton's motion is to bring them into council to talk about Sims Corner. Councillor Harris, over to you for a question.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot more quality of life issues that are hinging on DTI's involvement in this city than Sims Corner. So, you know, we have the Main Street corridor, we have the Stanley Street Bridge, which was promised in 2007 to have the chain link replaced on it. Committed to, not just, oh, we'll get around to it. No, they said in 2007 it was in the budget to do. Hasn't been done. That was in the Telegraph Journal. So I just feel like between Main Street, between a number of other issues that affect people in the city, DTI seems to be the only department that we or even other elected officials walk into and we're just told to go pound sand and to be okay with it. So I have a hard time. We obviously need to get to the bottom of DTI's involvement with Sims Corner, but there's a lot of other issues. So I guess my question would be to the CAO, is there not other issues that we need answers to that we can put to DTI that night? Because I feel like if we just give them Sims Corner, that lets them off the hook to just talk about what they might do in the future and a design. But there's things that they've committed to that they haven't done.
Well, I think for us, they sent the letter in reference to Sims Corner.
I understand that,
And
but we
so-
never get them here.
No, but we'll get them here. But if we make them part of the presentation of Sims Corner, then the questions would be about that. But I'll send it over to you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, through you to the councillor. We do meet with them regularly, and so, you know, if there are some questions that, you know, you'd like to have answered, we can send them off to them ahead of time so that, you know, they're prepared to speak to those. I know Main Street is one I'll touch on a little later this evening. We do have alignment there. We do have both highway usage permits in place, and so we're able to move forward with that project now. Stanley Street, you know, chain link fence would be another one. It's one that we touch on from time to time as part of our discussions, as part of a broader list of projects and initiatives we're requesting from them. So yeah, if there's any particular, we can give them a heads up. But as the mayor said, their focus in terms of this offer was really directed towards.
Yeah. So I guess that's fine. I understand that we have, you know, we have a scope of work we need to talk about with Sims Corner that is the priority. But I really hope that our staff and administration are communicating the frustration of what it's like to be an elected official trying to respond to a resident about why Route 101 looks astronomically different in Rossay than it does in the city of St. John, at why it's so easy to get a crosswalk for an industrial passageway at Ocean Steel than it is for the top of the Reversing Falls Bridge where people cross to go to school. Like, there is a significant impediment to progress in this city that seems to always go to DTI's door, and nobody has been able to give me an answer to the multitude of questions that come with that. So I understand we need to focus that, but I hope they also know that there's a little bit of an antithetical relationship here between us and them about what progress looks like, because I still don't have answers to the list of questions you listed off. I understand the alignment piece, but I don't know what they're doing about them, what their commitments are, because they've known about them for years in many cases. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And like I said, we want to make them part of the presentation for the Sims Corner item when it comes up. But as the CAO said, we can chase some of those other things as well. Councillor Radwan, I'll go to you next. Councillor Ogden, do you have your light back on? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just to kind of ask, piggybacking on what Councillor Harris was talking about, CAO McGovern, do we know if in the provincial budget, I haven't had a chance to look at the details, if Main Street, Stanley Street Bridge, if there's been any money allocated for Sims Corner? Because for me, it's great to say we're committed to a line, and it's another thing to show me the money. So do we know if they have anything in their budget, just to clarify that? 'Cause maybe
No,
the
that's what
commitment's there.
that's why the letter's here tonight.
No, I get it with the
Is they
Sims
said
Corner
in it,
one.
we're committed to a redesign. So we want them to come
Talk
here.
about design. What
Over to
about
you.
the other two items?
Yeah, as far as Main Street, that'll be a project that's our responsibility, so something that we've budgeted for and we would execute on with municipal funds with some cost sharing from the province, I think through RDC we've secured.
Okay.
And then with respect to Stanley Street Bridge, no, there's no funding set aside. In fact, the comments on it was that it's not, it's when they look at all their infrastructure and their assets across the province, it's not one that is a priority.
Okay. Interesting.
Councillor Ogden, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, 28 years ago, when we did the marigolds and we painted the wall, we had to go to the province to paint that wall. There was a rusted fence on top of it from Paradise Road to Main Street. And remember, the cabinet ministers from St. John, who were under Frank McKenna, came down and helped us paint, and they said, Barry, that rusted fence will be down and changed in 3 months. That was 28 years ago. And they told me it was no problem. It wasn't going to cost a lot of money because they were going to issue it out to Fundy Fencing. And it was no problem. That was 28 years ago. And I think the problem is when you look at the Stanley Street Bridge, though it might be a small thing to some, it is also linked to 5 priority neighborhoods that don't exist where the bureaucrats live in Fredericton. And I'm sure that if it was in the middle of their neighborhoods, it would be done. And a lot of people walk across that bridge. When my mother was dying, I saw it every day for 4 years, and people would say to me, there's no lights. These are a lot of single moms walking across there. They don't own cars. It's terrible. The police, a couple of us called the police a couple times because a couple women were grabbed. So it's dark, it's rusted. You wouldn't have this in a neighborhood with a lot of wealth, like in Fredericton. So I don't think the bureaucrats even know the influence of Stanley Street Bridge. And when you say it's not a priority, then good God, what is a priority if we don't take care of humanity? And so I think we got to get across to the bureaucrats in Fredericton the high levels of poverty in this city, the lack of taxes staying in this city, and they're directly related and to a lack of education. And those are some of the arguments we have to make to Fredericton that they don't seem to understand. So to me, Stanley Street is iconic in some ways. For a poor neighborhood, have to put up with that type of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so the motion is to take them up on their offer to come in to this council and talk about the Sims Corner. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have our items that came from Committee of the Whole as recommendations. So the first one is 17.1, and this is with respect to an agreement related to New Brunswick Museum project. And the resolution would be that the city enter into an assignment and assumption agreement generally in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its March 24th meeting with the Board of New Brunswick Museum in the province of New Brunswick as represented by the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure for the purpose of assigning the obligations in the option agreement between the city and the province dated June 20, 2024 related to PID 552-22012 to the Board of New Brunswick Museum, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement and assumption agreement and any other document ancillary thereto.
Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 17.2, recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to consent to sublet Reversing Falls Skywalk, Inc. to St. John History and Nature Gallery, Inc. And the resolution is that the city consent to a sublease of the premises at 200 Bridge Road, St. John, New Brunswick, identified as PID 551-55485, also known as the Reversing Falls restaurant site, under the terms and conditions contained in the sublease presented to Committee of the Whole at its March 24th, 2025 meeting, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any document necessary to effect the city's consent to the sublease.
Deputy and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 17.3, recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to the 2025 update to non-union terms and conditions. And the resolution is resolved that Common Council adopt the recommendation brought forward from Committee of the Whole to authorize the CAO to implement changes to the City of St. John terms and conditions of employment for non-union personnel as detailed in M&C 2025-086.
Councillor Harris and Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And 17.4 is another recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to sale of .14 acre lot at 311 Sandy Point Road. The resolution is that the city declare the property at 311 Sandy Point Road, PID 000-48900, surplus. 2, that the city enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with the Admiral Supply Chain Management Professional Services, Inc., generally in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on March 10, 2025, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement of purchase and sale and any documents necessary to facilitate this transaction, and that the net proceeds of the sale of the above transaction be deposited into the general fund capital reserve.
Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. What time is it, City Clerk?
We have 4 minutes to public hearings, Your Worship, so we could start one of the council submissions
Okay.
if you wanted to. Okay. So the first item under submissions by council members is 11.1 on your agenda, and it's a submission by the mayor with respect to selection of deputy mayor, and this was deferred from the meeting of March 10th.
Okay, so I'll read my motion. My motion is that staff be directed to prepare an amendment to the council's procedural bylaw to allow the mayor at the first meeting of a new council to nominate a councillor-elect to serve as deputy mayor for a 4-year term. And I need a seconder to go on that. Councillor Ogden. So I'll read quickly a little bit of the background. Under the current legislation, local governments in New Brunswick are responsible for appointing a councillor to serve as a deputy. While the law mandates the appointment, it leaves the process of selection of the deputy to the discretion of the municipal council. Historically, Common Council's practice has been to appoint the councillor who's received the highest number of votes in the municipal election as deputy mayor, and in 2021, Common Council amended that procedural bylaw. We did that in 2021 because there was only 2 councillors out of the 10 of us that ran at large who would even have the most numbers of votes. So there was only 2 really in that race all along. The new procedure stipulates that councillors wishing to serve as a deputy mayor must declare their candidacy at the first meeting of the newly elected council, and at the next meeting, the council then chooses its preferred candidate by adopting a resolution. The process of selecting the preferred candidate can be divisive for a new council that's formed, and as an alternative, I'm suggesting that the council consider adopting a model similar to that of Fredericton. And under that model, the mayor nominates the councillor, and then it would have to be ratified in the open session of Common Council. So that's my motion. And the reason I'm bringing this, and it's not any drama, as I've heard that some people think I'm unhappy with my deputy. That's not the case. I've been very happy with my deputy. When I started this job as a mayor, I didn't really know what I needed, but I know that now that I need someone that can do the Fundy Regional Services Commission, because the work there has been, the last deputy did that as well. The work there has been huge to get that done. I'm usually on my emails about 5:30 in the morning, so I need to be able to call my deputy I'd like to call my deputy by 7 a.m., but I wait till 8. And then I need to sometimes call the deputy like into the evenings. There's the scope of work is it's weekdays, it's weekends, it's evenings, it's daytime. So I have found, I guess, that I need someone. I'm happy that John is retired and he's been able to have the time to do it. I'm happy his kids are the same age as my kids because he doesn't have small kids that he has to be at home for, et cetera. So I just find that with the 2 of us, we've worked well together. I know John from the District Education Council. So it's been a good partnership over these last 4 years. And because of that, rather than having a councillor selected for the mayor, I think it would make more sense for the mayor to try to be part of that process. And I just don't want it to be divisive because a new council, you're trying to bring your team together and then with that job, to vote on it. I just found that uncomfortable at the beginning of this. So that's where I am on it, but I'll go to Councillor Harris as first up for some comments. Councillor Harris, over to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to table this until after the public hearing if we need to, since it is 6:30. I know we had to
Sounds
start
good.
this. However, let's leave it at that. I have some comments to return to if I can just
Yep.
get in the queue but I'll move that we table this so that we can start the public hearings since it's now 6:30.
Okay, on the question, all in favor? Thank you. I've listed the order that everyone's names came up, so we'll go back to that. All right, City Clerk, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's now 6:30, as mentioned by the councillor, and the public hearings are scheduled to begin. So the first one we have is 9.1 on your agenda, and this is for proposed zoning bylaw text amendment. It does have a staff presentation and Planning Advisory Committee report with respect to crisis care facility.
Okay, I'm sending this one over to Commissioner Poffenroff to open up.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. This evening's first public hearing is for a text amendment to the zoning bylaw that was initiated by Growth and Community Services Department. The application will amend the crisis care facility definition and add it as a permitted use within the utility service zone. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is the recommendation to amend the zoning bylaw. I'll now turn it over to Yeva Matson, the planner on the file, for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Before you today is a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw that was put forth by Growth and Community Services. So the crisis care facility use provides short-term accommodation to a person in crisis requiring immediate lodging. Since the adoption of the zoning bylaw in 2014, there have been a variety of zones that allow this use, and in 2022, after a Common Council endorsed the city's Affordable Housing Action Plan, there was another amendment to allow for it in more residential and commercial zones. Before you today is another amendment to allow this use in the utilities service zone. This is also paired with a text amendment to the definition that'll just provide the ability to establish supervision requirements in a context-specific manner, and an amendment to the parking to do a similar thing. So the proposed amendment is in line with the Housing for All strategy. The Housing for All strategy, adopted July 2024, had the goal to provide safe housing or safe community spaces for access by all residents while supporting individuals as they access housing that meets their specific needs. Through expanding the zones in which the crisis care facility is a permitted use, it broadens the sites that can be considered for this type of use without undergoing the rezoning process. So as crisis care facilities are often established due to specific needs of the community and may be required in a really short time frame, there's a direct benefit in ensuring that there'd be a diverse range of sites that could be activated in a timely manner. This amendment would allow for the use in the utility service zone, and as said, it's paired with that text amendment to the definition and parking just to provide for more of that flexibility. So the utility service zone is intended to accommodate a range of utility and service infrastructure, but these sites are often owned and maintained by the city or a large utility provider, and they're located across the city and range from small, fully developed sites to larger vacant lots. As these sites largely support the infrastructure and utility needs of the city, a rezoning to a different zone that would permit crisis care facility is usually not feasible just due to those existing uses. So the inclusion of the crisis care facility as a permitted use in the US zone will establish additional sites that are owned by the city and could be quickly activated when an immediate need for a crisis care facility arises. And just on the map, there is all the circled US sites that are available at the moment. Since this is a text amendment, the only public engagement is the required website ad, which was posted on February 25th, and then there was the PAC date on February 18th. We have had no letters or emails or inquiries about it. In summary, staff and PAC are recommending that council adopt the attached bylaw amendment, which would allow for the crisis care facility in that utility service zone. And this would just allow for more flexibility if a community need arises. And it does include, again, that text amendment and the parking amendment just to allow us to provide more supervision and parking requirements based on the operational requirements or the site-specific So these amendments will align with our Housing for All strategy adopted last year and will support a key action item to provide additional housing opportunities for the provision of emergency housing and shelter beds. And it'll provide additional locations for the establishment of crisis care facilities that just really give us some flexibility in the design and operation. And that is my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. All right. I will now open the public session. the public hearing, and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against this application, this proposal. And I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the proposal. City Clerk, we don't have anyone online? Okay, and I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who'd like to speak against this proposal of the zoning bylaw text amendment. All right, so I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. And I'll ask for a second time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. Not seeing anyone, I will now close the public hearing, and I'll ask my team if you have any questions for staff. Not seeing any. City Clerk, do you want to give us the motions that are required for this?
Yes, this requires two motions. We require approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
Councillor Stewart and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And it's titled, "A Law to Amend the Zoning Bylaw of the City of St. John."
Thank you. Councillor Harris is moving. Approve second reading by title. And Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is the second public hearing item, 9.2 on your agenda, and this is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with a staff presentation and a Planning Advisory Committee report with respect to 801 Loch Lomond Road.
Commissioner Poffenroff, over to you for the introduction, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. This next public hearing is for a rezoning that was submitted by Hughes Surveys and Consultants, Inc. for a portion of 801 Loch Lomond Road. The application will rezone the site to corridor commercial, which will permit the development of an animal shelter to be run by the SPCA. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is the recommendation to amend the zoning bylaw. I'll now turn it over to Thomas Llewellyn, the planner on the file, for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. As noted, the proposal requires rezoning a portion of the property identified as 801, Loch Lomond Road, from Business Park Commercial to Corridor Commercial to permit the development of an animal shelter run by the SPCA. Following a successful rezoning, a subdivision would be required to separate the newly zoned 1.32 hectare site from the parent parcel. This would be done at the staff level. The subject property is situated along Loch Lomond Road on the east side of the city between Commerce Drive and McAllister Drive. And the subject site is currently a vacant lot that is surrounded by commercial uses. This commercially zoned area acts as a buffer between the industrial lands to the south of Loch Lomond Road and the residential neighborhoods located off Mark Drive to the west and McAllister Drive to the east. Here's a photo of the access to the proposed lot, approximately located where the sign indicating 37 acres is located. Subject property is located within the Regional Retail Center designation and specifically the McAllister Regional Retail Center. The McAllister Regional Retail Center is one of two major retail centers in the city, which provides commercial retail and service-based uses intended to serve all of Southwest New Brunswick. Policy I-2, the municipal plan, is concerned with whether a rezoning and associated development are appropriate. Considering the requirements of Policy I-2, the development will not impose financial burden on the city, as it will use municipal water and private wastewater services. It is also situated on a major arterial road and aligns with surrounding commercial uses. Policy LU-61 of the municipal plan requires careful consideration of the development within the regional retail centers and that it should not detract from the city's primary centers. This development complies with this by the fact that the proposed land use is unsuitable for primary centers due to its need for open spaces for the animals. The site is effectively buffering between heavy industrial and residential uses, and the site will be landscaped to complement nearby commercial uses. Again, the subject site is currently zoned Business Park Commercial. The Business Park Commercial Zone accommodates areas that are generally identified for employment uses, including business offices, research and development facilities, as well as light manufacturing and assembly. Rezoning to corridor commercial is necessary because the business park commercial zone does not permit animal shelters. This corner of Loch Lomond Road and McAllister Drive feature a mix of commercial uses, and the rezoning is supported by the zoning bylaw. Letters were mailed out to property owners within 100 meters of the subject site on February 7th. No letters were received as this presentation. The public notice was posted on the city website on March 3rd, 2025, and the Planning Advisory Committee meeting was on February 19th. PAC and staff recommend that Common Council rezone approximately 1.32 hectares of 801 Loch Lomond Road from business park commercial to corridor commercial to permit the development of an animal shelter run by the SPCA. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll open the public hearing and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the zoning bylaw amendment for 801 Loch Lomond Road. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the proposal for 801 Loch Lomond Road. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the proposal for 801 Loch Lomond Road. City Clerk, we have no one registered for this? Okay. So I'll ask now if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of 801 Loch Lomond Road rezoning. Come forward and give us your name for the record. We know who you are.
Thank you, Your Worship. Rick Turner here on behalf of SPCA. Also in attendance, Sarah Parson, who's the president of the association, and Joan Richardson, who I've been working with to help them get themselves centered on a new facility.
Welcome.
The present location where they're at in Bayside Drive, if you're familiar with it,
Oh, yes.
the dog run is next to Bayside Drive. Not a very exciting situation for the animals. Their facility is a makeup of a bunch of scattered buildings, certainly not functional, so they're getting to a point where they're looking for new accommodation. And this site fits perfectly. Staff have made a wonderful presentation, as they always do. I don't think there's anything I can add, Your Worship.
All right, sounds good. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Turner? Councillor Ogden, or Councillor Radwan's up first. I see you're on the list here. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Just wondering if you have any idea if the proponents are considering having cremation services on site?
I cannot answer that.
Okay.
I think we have an understanding to know.
I'm also kind of curious if there would be any sort of objection to us putting a stipulation that there wouldn't be any cremation services on site in the future. There's just a daycare next door, so.
Cremation services, put that on.
Yes, all done off-site, contracted separate, so
All right, thank
no
you.
problem.
Okay, Councillor Ogden, over to you.
This is great news, Rick. My sister was on the board there for probably 50 years, that and the SPCA board. And she was kind of known as the dog and cat lady, where we used to have problems on the streets of St. John that we don't have anymore. So they were in the old building that was the old dump, that the building was falling apart. And then going there was something else. But this is great news. And I just can't, this is just, I mean, the way we treat animals has changed so much and for the better, and this is good news. And I know they always sent cremation out, so I don't think that's a concern for people. But we've come a long way in this city of taking care of animals, and this is really good news. And I see Mr. Sam up there, one of my football players, and I'm very pleased to see that he's involved because he's also become a well-known doctor in the city. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I guess there are no other questions. I will say as well, I think it's a nice location. I am familiar with Bayside. My daughter adopted an older dog there a few years ago. We spent about a month over there, making sure the dog was prepared to take us on. So this will be a much nicer location, I think, too. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No other questions, so City Clerk, over to you for the motions.
Your Worship, did you have any other speakers?
Oh, sorry, I haven't called 3 times. I've only done it once. So I'll ask once again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application for 801 Loch Lomond. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone else here who'd like to speak in favor of the application for 801 Loch Lomond Road. Okay, seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing, and I'll ask my team if they have any questions for staff. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we are able to maybe put a motion for a Section 59 condition that if there is in the future cremation services, that they would happen after 6 p.m., which is basically the hours of the daycare that's next door.
It is possible to put the motion forward. That's within council's domain to make that decision.
Yeah, just
So
mostly-
would we put that on as a Section 59 condition
It
for
would
third
be.
reading? Okay, CAO.
Yes, Your Worship, that's something we could do. I understand there's only one facility in the city that does cremations, but if it's a wish of council to actually add this as a Section 59 condition, that's something that could be done.
Post 6 p.m., yeah, if it ever happens. All right, sounds good. So City Clerk, over to you for the motions then. I don't see any other questions.
Was the counselor moving a motion on the Section 59, or?
Will we put that on for third reading, or are we doing that now?
It would be done now, so it
So
could be
it-
ready for third
Okay.
reading.
Yeah, if we can do that, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that would just be a Section 59 condition. If there's cremation services, that they would occur after 6 p.m.
Yes, oh, sorry. Okay, Councillor Stewart, over to you.
Just for clarification, the proponent has stated that there will not be cremation services held on the site. Is that correct? Everybody saying that?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all I need to know, clarification.
Okay, so City Clerk, what are our motions then now?
So did we have a seconder for that?
So do I have a seconder for the Section 59 condition? Okay, so we'll let that fail then. Okay, so what? give me a
So
motion.
there are two motions required to move this forward. Same as last time, the approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
Approval of first reading by title. Councillor Darling and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
And I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay. Next item, City Clerk.
And now we would move back to your submission, Your Worship, and we'd need a motion to lift that from the table because it was tabled.
So moved for 11-1 and Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Harris, you're up first, and then Councillor Lowe.
Yes. Mayor, I feel pretty strongly about this one. And just as a background, you know, when we came together, we were under the new rules that were decided. So in the last election, that month, one of council's last moves was to change the dynamics around how the deputy mayor is selected. And I can see the rationale behind wanting the deputy mayor to be somebody who is aligned with the mayor. I just happen to think the best way to do that is to ensure that the mandate comes from the public. I think the rules we had in place, even though, yes, it preferred councillors at large, it's not a foregone conclusion that you don't get 15 councillors running at large and everybody walks away with 1,500 votes and somebody from a different ward wins that. It's not foregone. It doesn't happen very often, but as somebody who took that seriously, I mean, I put a position paper out for my nomination for the deputy's position. I do find it problematic that the only people who seem to be able to keep up with the workload of the deputy mayor are, as you said, people who are in a certain demographic. I think the people of the city elect people based on issues, based on tone, based on a number of analysis. And I think if we take the decision from them, sure, that happens at other levels. Yes, the deputy prime minister and the deputy premier is selected. However, at the municipal level, we have something the other two levels of government don't, which is a lot of trust from the public. I had Donald J. Savoy on a podcast that I do. And he said very clearly that he's an adjunct professor at the University of Oxford. He's sort of the institutional memory and understanding around the democratic institutions in the Maritimes and various pieces. And he said very clearly that the research shows how much more trust there is in local government compared to provincial or federal levels of government. And I think we have to get that right. And I don't think we necessarily reduce the level of conflict just because the mayor chooses. I think we introduce an opportunity for there to be more conflict, for there to be more suspicion about who's buddy-buddy and who's on the inside. So I can't support the motion. I see the rationale. Personally, I think we need to bring a motion to council to go back to the way it was. Because if we let the public choose based on the votes, whoever replaces the mayor, if the mayor disappears, if the mayor resigns, if the mayor is unavailable, then at least it's put to the public opinion to decide. So anyway, that's my position. So that's why I'll be voting against it.
That's fine. I don't know if the public understood that the person with the most votes is automatically the deputy. And so if you had run against Shirley McAlery, Shirley was the mayor from
that will take us a long time.
Well, that will take us a long time, and you're right, I do want to get out of here because I want to get to see the National. All right. I will forego those comments then, and I'll go right over to, I think Councillor Lowe's next, yes, on my list.
Yeah, I understand what the motion is, and am I entitled to make an amendment to the motion now, Your Worship? Can I make an amendment?
Say whatever you like, sure. Say whatever you want to say.
I move an amendment that if I can get a seconder, that the mayor, whoever it may be, surveys the councillors that are interested in becoming a deputy mayor, but that the mayor interviews all those people that are interested before a decision is made. If
All
I
right.
get a seconder.
And then the vote comes back to council?
Yeah. No. I don't have a problem with the mayor selecting the councillor. But what I'm asking for is that you interview, if you're the mayor, you interview any councillor that shows interest in being the deputy mayor. Then you can make the decision of who it be.
Right, okay. So
That's the amendment.
Okay, so the clerk says an amendment will trump that, trump the motion, so can we can add that on there?
I got to get second, huh? Trump, what's that mean?
So if there's
I'm
a
not allowed to use
seconder,
that. I'm not
Your
allowed to-
Worship,
Not allowed to use that word.
if there's a seconder, then the.
Councillor Stewart is seconding that. Okay, that sounds good.
So you would vote on the amendment first.
We'd vote on the amendment first. So on the amendment, any questions for Councillor Lowe? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? And what have we got opposed? Hang on, we need the opposed again. 1, 2, 3. 3 out of 7 or 3 out of 9?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, so next step over to,
And so now you would go back to the main, so the amendment has been approved. Now you go back to the main motion
right?
and take a vote on that as well.
Okay, so we'll go back to the speakers then. Councillor Radwan, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on what we have available to us, I think this is probably the best bet. But ultimately, I like democracy. And I would love to be able to see that the residents vote for somebody who's running for deputy. And it's my understanding, of course, this is not something that happens in the province right now, so it's something that would need to be changed at the provincial level, but that puts it out there, and people will have to talk about how they're qualified to be deputy, how they're available to be deputy, and then the residents would actually choose a deputy. I think what you'll end up seeing is that whoever gets in for mayor is going to be lobbied like crazy, and it's a whole lot of pressure again on one person. But you definitely want to have somebody that you can work with. So I'm gonna actually support your motion, Mayor. But I think that really in the future it's something that residents should vote for. Vote for the deputy who's running for deputy, who shows what their intentions are as deputy. So.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I understand it, notwithstanding that the mayor would choose somebody, that ultimately the power is still with council to vote. And the province of New Brunswick requires a council
Absolutely.
vote. And so for me, I have some concerns about that as a selection process. I think ultimately the mayor, and in their stead, if the mayor is absent, the deputy mayor represents council. So it is really important that the deputy mayor ultimately be appointed by council. I think, I know concern is at the start of a mandate, it can be tough because there's politics that get involved, and there were certainly lots of phone calls and politics at the start of this one. I've been involved in 3 councils, and 2 of the 3 had all sorts of conversations in politics before, and the other one was Shirley McAlery. So, I mean, you know, when former Mayor McAlery sitting there, that was the easy one. You know, I like democracy. I agree with Councillor Radwin. If you could do it in the province of New Brunswick, I think you'd set it up somehow so somebody actually runs for deputy mayor and puts it on the sign. The other piece I would add, some of the duties that you've described, and I think our current deputy mayor has served them well, but aren't part of the job description of the deputy mayor. The deputy mayor in job description is look after the meetings, represent council. There are a number of very able-bodied people sitting around this council that could be mayor's designate on different committees, because I think many of them you can't be everywhere, understood, but certainly could be mayor or designate, which does not necessarily have to be the deputy mayor. So I'm going to listen on this. Doesn't really matter to me. There's always going to be politics as long as at the end of the day council is making the final decision. So if council doesn't agree with the mayor, they can send it back to the mayor to pick somebody else.
Sounds good. Thank you. Councillor Darling, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I do want to echo Councillor Sullivan's points around the public trust and keeping that in, as well as Councillors Radwan and Harris. I think my one thought, especially as we're having this conversation, is there an opportunity, instead of kind of going based on our feelings and what right now we think may be better than the option we have, is having city staff investigate across municipalities in Canada what is the best practice for choosing deputy mayor, and having the top 2 recommendations and choosing between those.
And we've investigated this. I believe the teams investigated this, and that was part of that kit, and that's why the Fredericton model was quoted. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to that, or maybe General Counsel, speak a little bit to it? Or, of course, the clerk. John, over to you.
Yeah, Your Worship, this work did occur in 2021, I believe, at the direction of council, where we did do a jurisdictional review. It is 4 years old now, but that's how we arrived. That's how council arrived at the current model we use, was based on the recommendations of that report. And that was circulated to council, just as a reminder, earlier today, just to refresh council's memory.
Right, yeah. Okay, Melanie, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Then the only thing I would add to your point, Councillor, is that legislation will vary across the country. So one of the things we picked up in the environmental scan is that in certain areas, in certain jurisdictions, they actually, to Councillor Radwan's point, actually run for deputy mayor, but their legislation is explicit about that. And in New Brunswick, there's a variety of things that takes place. So there's no, there doesn't seem to be a quote-unquote industry standard on that point in New Brunswick.
So I've thought about this a lot. I've tried to figure out like what would be the fairest way. What's the easiest way for council to figure it out, how we're going to do it going forward. If we only had 8 councillors and they all were in wards, it would be more fair, I think, but then you'd have to get rid of the 2 at-large councillors. So I suspect the 2 at-large councillors were probably brought forward when they went to the ward system as a throwback to what they were doing. And then, like I said, Shirley was the mayor from 95 until 2004, so she had a lot of name recognition. And I don't know if she ran in between those years, but in 12, when I got on council, she was a deputy. And then, of course, again, in 16, she was a deputy because, I mean, she got probably more votes, running as a councillor. She got over 10,000 votes every time. So she, she had a lot of name recognition. So I'm really just trying to figure out what would be the best for council and best for the team, and how do we support the team as we go forward. I don't want it to be divisive. And maybe it has to be if, yes, we could all, like the mayor could go around and interview everyone. So that's really my genesis for it. I didn't want to leave it to Councillor Harris said in 2021. So we may have done that just before the end of our term. I can't remember when it was done in 21. And then there's a public expectation of what actually is. And maybe the job description needs to be changed for what is actually happening, because a lot of it has changed over time of what's expected by the public of councillors and the mayor and what the duties would be. So that's my thoughts on it. But Councillor Harris, over to you again.
An additional thought, just in reflection there, I understand what everybody's getting at here, but we all run on issues. We all put things on the table that we want to either do differently, improve on, or change, or stop doing. And the public has to have some sort of way of deliberating. And in this model, if you get a mayor that breaks through, because as you say, there's a lot of name recognition, it doesn't mean that the issues that maybe 4 out of the other 10 councillors put on the table didn't get the most support from the public. So how do you decide what the public mandate is a broader question that I think we can't answer here. But we're trying to, by positioning a deputy mayor. Because I personally think if you had a mayor that ran on a heavy platform, and then you had a deputy mayor, or you had somebody else that got a lot of votes that came close at that councillor at large phase, which I think is very important, because you have to have at least a couple of people that can get outside of the silo of a ward and get outside of the political, especially in a moment where we have a real estate crisis, where it is very convenient to be a ward councillor that pushes back against development. Because there's a lot of people with homes with a lot of wealth wrapped up in those homes that want to high-five you on the way to ending all development in their neighborhood. That becomes a toxic pill if you have a mayor and a deputy that have just colluded to arrange their positions here. So I'm not accusing anybody of that. I just am trying to prevent any of that in the future. We're already in a hot seat right now around NIMBYism, around development, around whose backyard, if not mine. And I think if we give it to the public as much as possible, you prevent that. And you say, well, look, this person ran on a mandate. Here are the 6 things they said they were going to do. You guys voted for it, come what may. And right now, we don't have a mechanism of putting that on the table. So anyway, just to add some flavor to the conversation, I still can't vote for it, but I understand the wrestling match that's occurring, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Oh, I don't want it to be a wrestling match. I'm trying to find what the path is, the best path. Councillor Stewart, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to Councillor Harris's point there about potential collusion, I also see potential conflict if we have somebody running for deputy mayor and their position is vastly different than the mayor's, and they both get elected. How are we supposed to accomplish anything if they're sitting there butting heads all the time? And we've seen that happen in St. John Council. Looking at it from a business perspective, the boss of the company picks their right hand, their number one, if you will, because they have the same ideology or the same agenda, and they can get more done, not because they're colluding together, because this is very public. Everything we do is transparent and public. We know that as councillors. So I don't see that there's the collusion part of this would ever be a problem. I see it more as the conflict that we've already witnessed between councillors and mayor or deputy mayor. I see that more as a potential problem if the deputy mayor gets elected. So just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe, back to you for round two.
Well, but I was going to second the motion. It's your motion, but if there's another speaker, I think there is, I'll wait and then I'll second your motion. You made a motion, did you not? There's a
Okay, but
motion.
your motion overruled, so his motion takes precedence.
No.
No?
The amendment's
one?
been passed.
we've got the
Now we're
amendments.
back to
Okay,
the
yeah.
motion.
All right.
But I don't think it was seconded, but I won't second because there's a speaker.
I thought it was
There's two
seconded.
speakers now.
It was seconded.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. I thought it was seconded. Okay, Councillor Radwan, back to you.
I think it's important,
For
thank
round
you,
two.
Mayor, to say that, how do we keep nepotism out of this? We've got a history in St. John. We've had brothers here. We've spouses here. I think the best way to do it sometimes is for an election, but I am going to support your motion anyway. And the one thing that I want to say as well is as much as I respect your position, Mayor, as the person who is talking about the will of council all the time and in that role, the mayor's not the boss. So that's a very different thing. We're all equally elected, but you certainly do play a different leadership role than the rest of us. So I respect that, but I just wanted to say that I think the best way to keep nepotism out is the residents will do it.
I think the boss is a term of endearment, I hope, Councillor Schuer. Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, boss.
Yeah.
Actually, I love that we're having this discussion on governance. It helps us work on the business, not in the business. Anyway, but some thoughts. Just to pile on Councillor Radwan, one of the things many of the public might not pick up on the difference between municipal government and other levels of government is, for folks who think the mayor comes in and tells us all how we're going to vote and what we're going to do, like a premier might or like a prime minister might, you might want to check in with Mayor Reardon.
Yeah, good luck.
And municipal politics, like if council votes, no offense, but if council votes to say the mayor shall dance, right? Like ultimately, but that leads us into the job description again, right? The mayor's job and the deputy mayor in their stead is to represent the will of council. And it's really, I like it. It's why in municipal politics, it's bottom up. Nobody comes in and I'm a party of one, tells me how to vote. And I think, I think our current team has done a good job of representing council and taking things forward. But I got to think we're talking about policy here. We're not talking about our current team and what might happen in St. John in the future. Conflict, there is a $10,000 bonus that comes with being deputy mayor. If the mayor selects somebody, is there a conflict there that somebody owes them a thanks for the extra 10 grand? That's why it's important that ultimately council make that final decision. So it's council's responsibility. Back to the job description. It could bring some balance if you have a mayor and deputy mayor who might not necessarily see eye to eye. It's important that we're respectful, but conflict around this table is not a bad thing. If we all agree, we don't make the best decisions. We need people pushing back. We need to have important, deep conversations and full conversations about things. And as long as it's respectful conflict about the topic and not about the people, I think that's an important part of democracy. And finally, job description, mayor and designate. I think the mayor does have power for a lot of things about who represents us in her stead. It's very, very clear if the mayor is out of town or the mayor is sick, the deputy mayor chairs us, represents us in the media and represents the decisions of council. But there are a number of committees that it's mayor or designate. And the mayor has incredible power to designate who represents in that committee. And again, I hate to be redundant, but I think it's important. For any mayor, they've got a team around the table, and the deputy mayor doesn't have to carry all that load. The team around the table, some people might work and not be available during the day. Some people might have more daytime time to deal with it. That's part of managing your team. After listening, I think I am going to support the motion because at the end of the day, it's council that's going to make the decision.
Sounds good. I guess what I would be looking for, and Councillor Harris mentioned this, we all run on platforms, but to get those platforms done takes work. And for me, I need a worker bee. I'm prepared to work. I don't have a job. I don't have a full-time job in the daytime like some people do. I don't have little kids I'm running home to. So I've got the time, and I want that. I want to be able to do that, but I need my deputy to be a worker bee as well. So I guess, and then how do we make that decision? And I just want to make it easier for council if possible. So if we have a little bit of latitude with this, we can go forward with it. And it's never maybe going to be perfect, but I think there's lots of things that we can do and change the job description, et cetera, as we go forward. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Councillor Harris, thank you. And I, like Councillor Sullivan, did enjoy this. I like this conversation. I like it. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Your worship, and just for the record, you were voting there on the motion as amended. So it would have
Right.
been your original motion, including the
Right.
amendment that passed by
Councillor,
yeah.
are we good?
That's good. And
Okay.
on that one, we had one nay, which
One
was
nay, Councillor Harris. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next
So
item.
next item would be 11.2, and this is a submission by Deputy Mayor McKenzie with respect to employee group benefits coverage for council members. Again, this was deferred from the meeting of March 10th.
Deputy, over to you to read your motion and get a seconder.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a little easier one. The proposed motion is that the CAO be directed to report back to council with respect to extending the eligibility for the city's employee group benefits package to the members of council.
Put a seconder on that, Councillor Darling. All right, so I'll call the question on this because this is more of a referral motion, City Clerk.
Yeah.
So I'll call the question because you're going to report back, staff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item? Oh, sorry, nay? Okay, sorry, Councillor Sullivan. One nay, Councillor Sullivan. Next item?
Thank you. Next is 11.3. This is a submission by Councillor Ogden with respect to speaking time for statutory public hearings deferred from March 10th.
Councillor Ogden, over to you to read your motion.
That staff be directed to report back to council with a draft procedural bylaw amendment for, does that say 5 minutes? Okay, thank you. For individuals speaking at statutory public hearings to a 5-minute maximum. The whole idea is this, I've heard from a number of people, single parents.
Can I get a seconder
Oh,
on
sorry.
that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Ogden.
The whole reason is I've heard from a number of parents, single parents who can't come to the next meeting, who didn't get to talk to this meeting. Now, we've had 3, was it Sunnyside was one? Is that the name of the?
Sunnyside was a long one, yes.
Yeah, and then we've had Sims Corner, and then we have Laurenville. And maybe having all those combined was not a good idea, but we don't have control of that. But we also had people who left and wanted to speak, and then people who have jobs, children, and everything else, and it wasn't advantageous. And of course, we have a legal time limit, and I don't know if people know that. We don't stay here all night, though lately it seems that way. So my whole goal here is to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. When I taught, when I coached, it was really important to me to make sure I heard everybody. When I taught school, I walked the halls to make sure I talked to the kids that nobody talked to. And I really think it's important in a democracy that we get to hear from everybody, whether we agree or disagree. So that's my whole goal here. It's not so much the time limit, it is to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go to the speakers now, or the councillors. Councillor Sullivan, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are many different ways to be heard at a public hearing. You can write a letter, We read all the letters. You can be here in person. If you can't make it in person, you can be on the screen. There are many ways to be heard. I think it's important that we have a time limit. Otherwise, people will go on and on and on. But I think 10 minutes is an appropriate time limit. I think 5 minutes might be very challenging for the proponent to describe what their plan is. Unless somebody is organized and has 10 more people behind them, everybody getting their 5-minute spot, for somebody to express all the reasons they may be against something. I do understand the concern about going long and people not having opportunities. I think there may be some other places that we can save some time during public hearing processes with respect. Perhaps we keep our questions to questions and not statements and arguments in the middle of the process. Perhaps we make sure that the answers are answers to the question and not for speakers using it as an opportunity to go over time and keep going into other things. I think 10 minutes is the right amount of time for a speaker, but I do think if we do some self-reflection, I know one thing, and Councillor McKenzie, Deputy Mayor, would be very familiar with this. I think part of the process at the DEC back in the day was at the end of every meeting to reflect on how the meeting went. Maybe we should have a couple of internal conversations about how our meetings are going and see maybe there's some things we can do better that will help get to the spirit of this motion, I think, which makes sure that everybody has an opportunity to have their say.
Sounds good, Councillor. Councillor Harris, over to you next.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this, recreating a new floor, I think, and a ceiling. But I'm hesitant to create a 5-minute ceiling, I guess. There's a lot of people that come up that the only message they're trying to deliver is that I'm against this for A, B, and C reason. But the art of brevity is not something that a lot of St. Johners are talented with. And I love that about them because you can talk and get a lot more details. But in a setting like this where you could have 30 or 40 speakers, I think it becomes an impossible task for the mayor to facilitate the meeting. I think we have to shorten the ceiling to 5 minutes and give people an option. If there's a clear community spokesperson or a proponent spokesperson, there's no reason why you can't give some of your time. It's a common practice that occurs in other places. So I would put forward a motion to amend to reduce the amount of time to 5 minutes, as Councillor Ogden has put forward, but to allow proponents to give their time to come up and say, hey, I'm against this, but I'm going to give my time to the coherent, articulate speaker who's here with us doing A, B, and C. As an example, to a maximum of 10 or 15, let's say 15 minutes. Let's say we can give 2 people can come up and give their time, a maximum of 2 people, to somebody who's kind of got more of a quarterbacking role. So I'll put that amendment forward as a motion. If I get a seconder.
Councillor Lowe seconding that.
Second. So then, yeah, I think I agree with Councillor Sullivan. Some people need to have more time to speak, but I don't think everybody does. And I think if you give people 5 minutes, you have a sense that maybe I can stretch to 7. But unfortunately, it seems to be the case since I've been here anyway. If you give people 10 minutes, and we only have 2 minutes to speak. I'm looking at my clock countdown right now. I'm on 1 minute. And it's like, if you give people 10 minutes, then that stretch goal feels like 15 or 20, and it just gets out of hand, and I've seen it happen multiple times here. So I think there's a way we can tighten up, but also enable. So anyway, that's where I'll leave that.
So do we need to vote on this amendment right now? All right, so we've got the amendment on the floor. It's been presented and seconded. So I'm going to call the vote on this amendment that Councillor Harris has talked about. Are we good? Oh, wait a minute.
Your Worship, we're just having a discussion here in terms of ensuring we're clear. So when it comes to implementing something like this and managing it, does the person have to be a resident? Do they, are they in the community? I guess at a practical level, all of a sudden someone can go from speaking for 10 minutes if 4 people come forward, then one person then has a half an hour.
No, sorry, I said
Okay.
maximum 15.
Maximum 15?
Maximum 15 minutes. If 2 speakers come up and say, here's my 5 minutes, I'm giving it to Joe, they can only get to do that twice. 15 minutes is your max, 5 minutes is our max without any additions.
This is done.
No.
No, we need
No.
that motion.
This is
Yep.
done live.
No.
Mhm.
And then the other question I'll ask of the clerk is, what's the latitude of the mayor's position, though?
Well, the mayor is the chair of the meeting, so it's the mayor's job to determine what the policies and procedures say and interpret those. And so the mayor can encourage people to, go shorter than 10 minutes, and if not challenged by the rest of council. So if the mayor makes a judgment call based on the time of the night and maybe asks people to speed up, unless council passes a motion to challenge the ruling of the mayor, what the mayor states would be what happens at that meeting.
Okay, so the mayor then could also say, if it's not contentious and we don't have as many speakers, I could say, you can have 10 minutes even with the 5-minute rule.
That's correct, yeah. And now, again, if council were to
Challenge
challenge,
it.
the council always has the right to challenge any ruling the mayor makes, but if that's not challenged, then the ruling of the mayor is what stands.
Yep. Okay, just curious. I mean, I like the motion, but Deputy, over to you. Okay, so wait a minute. I have to vote on that?
So
We're gonna vote on the
we
amendment.
would be looking for a vote on the
Amendment.
amendment, and then if that passes, we'd vote on the original motion as amended.
Okay, so I'll go through the speakers first, and then. Only if you're speaking on the amendment, yeah.
Yeah.
So are we good on the amendment for speakers?
I just have a question
Question?
on the amendment.
On the amendment? Okay, over to you then, Deputy.
So what's the difference between what we have right now and what we're proposing?
5-minute max instead of a 10-minute max, with the
No.
option to give your remaining time to somebody else.
But the mayor has the authority, as long as council doesn't challenge her, on saying we got a room full of people here, we're going to make it 5 minutes instead of 10, or we only have half a room, you guys can have 10. And then council can say, yeah, it's a good idea or not, right?
But we need a rule, we need a resting rule. I
Do we-
agree, though.
Do we need the rule?
Maybe not. I mean, that's up to council. I think.
I guess I'm asking legal if we need the rule. Or what do you think, or the
Your
CAO?
worship, I don't think we need it. I think you have the flexibility as the mayor to manage that.
Okay.
Do you want it? Do you want to tell your friend that they only have 2 minutes? I'll send you the emails.
Okay. So what am I doing with this motion now, City Clerk?
So I would call
Call
the
the
vote
vote?
on the
Okay.
amendment.
All right, so I'll call the vote on the amended motion that's on the floor. On the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? Okay, motion fails.
Your worship, just so we have that in the record, can I just call out the nays? So we have Councillor Sullivan,
The
the
nays or
deputy.
the-
Yep, the nays
Oh,
on that
not me,
one.
don't, I'm on the,
Yep, you were a nay, weren't you, deputy?
oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
And-
I'm not usually an egg.
And we have Councillor Rodwan, and who else?
Councillor Darling.
And Darling, okay.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yep, and
Councillor
Councillor
Stewart.
Norton and Stewart, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, back to the comments. Councillor Redwan, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the sake of transparency, I just wanted to say, first of all, Councillor Ogden, I think you mean really well, and I always appreciate that. You're trying to keep things efficient. I totally appreciate that. When people come here, I've seen over the years, a lot of the time they get really nervous. And of course, they're on camera, they're in front of council. Sometimes that can delay things, and most people don't use 10 minutes. This is the only forum that St. John Council has for the public to come and speak at council, where actually, by the way, in Moncton, people can on the spot present at the start of their council meetings to council. So I don't want to limit the public in any of this at all, and I appreciate what Councillor Sullivan said, they can send in letters and things like that. And maybe that's what people should do if they think they are going to get nervous and if it is difficult for them to present. But I'm not supportive of it. I like democracy and I don't like to limit people too much. I mean, I don't think I like the idea of people going 15 minutes. I think you should be able to pretty much get things in 10. But, you know, the other thing that I have seen done at other councils is the mayor will really sometimes keep them on point, which is a little bit hard. But if they're going off topic, they kind of try to rein them back in, which is something that they uses, but that's a little hard to do. But yeah, so that's why I'm not voting for it, but I appreciate the spirit of it though.
All right, there's no other speakers here. I will say, oh no, what, Councillor Ogden, you're going to wrap it up. I'll speak before you do, maybe. Can you wrap it up for us? I'm supportive of this motion because councillors get 3 minutes times 2. So that's 6 minutes, but you're giving everyone in the audience 10 minutes. So I could even go for 6 at the max for people. I think we've sat through the chambers full and we've heard 10 minutes of really information that would not impact our decision. You know, it's hard to keep people on point when they're coming forward with what they want to state as far as that goes. And then, like, we're trying to make a decision here. So we've got what's in our kit and we're asking the public to come forward. And, you know, we hear about like all this, a lot of things that just will not impact the decision. And then for me, like if it's 10 minutes, I feel like I should give people the 10 minutes because I don't want people to say, especially in a contentious hearing, that they haven't been heard. So I try to give them their 10 minutes. But we had, you know, at one of our public hearings, we had only 2 speakers that were the total were 77 minutes between the 2 of them because then council asked a gazillion questions and whether that were questions that helped them to make up their mind going forward of which way they should vote on it or not. So it makes it a long night. And I'm not sure that becomes productive. So I think I like the 5-minute rule personally, and I think it aligns with what we are speaking. We speak for 6 times, you know, times 2 for any item. So I would be supportive of it. So Councillor Ogden, I'll send it over to you to finish it up, wrap it up.
Somebody said it was anti-democratic. The whole point of this is I'm consider myself very much a Democrat, is for more people to speak, and that's not anti-democratic, whoever said that. But the whole point to this was to listen to more people. And I will do whatever. I'm really glad we had the conversation. It's become a very public conversation. I got a ton of emails today, especially I didn't share with you from former students and say, hey, this is everything. And then I had to explain it, had to explain myself, which is good when you have to explain yourself to students. Right, Mr. Sullivan? We are all accountable. So anyway, I believe that it is democratic to let more people speak, and we have to find that out, especially living in a city of poverty. Because that's one of the things you teach people living in poverty is you have a voice, be heard. So whatever the direction of council is, it will be fine. I think we've made some really good points here. Got to tighten up things a bit. And maybe we as councillors have to contain our questions if it's in the document that we get Friday night, and read that thoroughly. And then maybe you won't have as many questions either. Anyway, so I'm fine with whatever goes on.
All right, well then I'll call the vote on your motion, Councillor Ogden. That's been seconded by Councillor Harris, correct? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed? Okay, 5, 4, 9. Yeah. Okay. All right, next item, City Clerk. Yeah, sure. So I call, Councillor Lowe, why is your light on?
Next motion, but then you decided to talk about that.
Okay, we're just going to, so everyone in favor of Councillor Ogden's motion? And opposed to the 5-minute rule? Okay. All right, next item, City Clerk.
And next is a council submission by Councillor Lowe, 11.4 on your agenda, timelines for paving roads after milling is completed.
Councillor Lowe, over to you. You read your motion, and then if you get a
I'll read
seconder,
the
we'll go
motion,
forward.
see if I can get a second.
Okay.
That the CAO be directed to report back to council with a draft policy that would require contractors to adhere to strict timelines on paving city streets as part of the city annual asphalt resurfacing programs to be applied once the road milling process has been started on each street.
Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Go ahead there, Councillor Lowe, for your rationale.
Well, the rationale being that the public, a street gets milled, and sometimes they don't come and pave it for long periods of time. I would like to have a 2-week period put in, but the consideration has to be given that the engineers would know whether there's curb, sidewalk, sewers that get circled in the middle, or if there's pipes that got to be pulled up out of the street. And I believe that can extend it beyond 2 weeks. But I feel that the public should be able to get an answer from somebody, whether it be an engineer or somebody, as to when that street will be paved. And also, one other little point is that where the road that's milled, where it meets the pavement on both ends, that it be curved round so that a car doesn't come and hit bang into an inch. There's a word for it. And I was told that when they mill them at the end and they kind of go up a little bit to meet the pavement. But I don't really think that it gets done that way. I believe it's supposed to be done that way, but I don't really think it gets done that way. If it was done that way, that'd be fair ball. The car wouldn't be hitting a straight angle, right angle edge on the pavement, which is happening. I mean, I owned a cab company, and the amount of rims and tires that were broken over the years is ridiculous about not having it paved after it's milled. So that's my argument, or that's my request to the city manager.
Thank you.
If it's second.
It has been seconded.
It's first and second, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Stewart, over to you.
Thank you, boss. So, I'm certainly in favor of this, but I do have a question I'd like to direct either to the CAO or to the commissioner behind me. That I'm not sure, given the turmoil that we go through with the Harbor Bridge every year for years and years, and all of the street construction that we have to do and the residents have to put up with, we have to hear them out. Why have we not had these time limits and fines in place? Why have we not had that up till now? It just makes sense to me that if we're going to tell somebody they can have that contract, you got this much time to do it. And if you don't do it in that time, then you're going to face a fine or penalty. We're going to claw back some money, or we're giving it to somebody else.
CEO, over to you.
Yeah, through your worship, really it's come down to wanting to prioritize, I think, lowest cost and flexibility, because when you provide that flexibility to the contractor, they can take on lots of other work and slot it in as best it suits them, which has, been the historic practice. And I understand where the motion is coming from, because once you have some experiences that we've had recently in terms of long delays for resurfacing where a contractor leaves the community and doesn't come back for many weeks or months, it causes problems. So totally appreciate where this is coming from. In terms of the proposed motion, just one note that I'd make in terms of, it says we're a draft policy, and I would just propose that maybe instead it be contract language instead of a policy, because we would use language within a contract to enable or to enforce those types of penalties and clauses that we would require of a contractor. So just a subtle change, but I think it results in the same outcome.
You good with that, Councillor Lowe?
Say it again. And I didn't hear you. speaking right in the mic. I was trying to hear you.
Yeah, just a subtle change. So it says that the CAO be directed to report back with a draft policy. Instead of a draft policy, I would propose contract language.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, sounds good. Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think we tend to think we don't have to do this, that our contractors are, top of mind of the taxpayers, and they want to keep their work load with the city. They appreciate the contracts and all that. But unfortunately, we find that, people take advantage of that, and you have something that should be done in a week or two, taking 2 or 3 months. So now I think we have to have that contract language, as the city manager said. And, Councilor Lowe and I talked about this last summer, I think it was. We had 2 or 3 streets, maybe half a dozen, that were not done for months. And so, happy to support this, Councilor. Thanks for bringing it forward again.
Yeah, good motion. All right, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Your worship, on that one, I just wanted to ensure that the mover and seconder had approved of the change to the
The
contract
mover did.
language.
Who was the seconder on that one?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, you good? Okay.
Yep.
All right, next item, City
So the
Clerk.
next item is a 12 business matter, and the first one is 12.1. The CAO will present the 2025 Strategic Initiatives Plan.
Excellent. This is an interesting one. Lots of work in here. Over to you, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll get the presentation up here. All good? I think it's coming up. Yep, there we go. Okay. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I want to walk through the 2025 Strategic Initiatives Plan. This overview will provide updates as it relates to the 2024 Initiatives Plan and the 2025 deliverables, many of which are multi-year initiatives. As the executive leadership team, we assembled and completed a review of the initiatives, the 10-year strategic plan, some council, resolutions, budget commitments, and we did this while reviewing and giving consideration to the deliverables and the level of effort that's needed and required to advance initiatives. Some initiatives require very extensive resource focus and time dedication. As I've discussed in previous updates, the focus of the initiatives plan is on strategic work, and that is, of course, working on the business, as we have discussed previously, to achieve the long-term vision and goals of the City of St. John. And so in terms of criteria, the criteria used in the initiatives review is as listed on the slide here. Alignment, we're always looking in terms of ensuring it aligns with the strategic objectives and outcomes. Risk, what is the risk if we don't advance or if it gets delayed to the organization? Resources, do we have the resources, the funding, the capacity to actually undertake and advance the initiatives? And do we have full control over the implementation? That I know we've all experienced some challenges with that in the past. And then performance, does the initiative actually contribute to the effective and efficient service delivery and accountability and communication? And lastly, service area capacity. So we look at the organization, all the various departments, and ensure that one is not overtapped in terms of demands and that there's a bit of balance as we move forward. So then in terms of prioritization, we complete the criteria and then give consideration to the prioritization. So there are those initiatives that are transformational and catalytic growth initiatives that are the highest priority, and they're typically multi-year, as we all know. Again, we look at the cross-departmental resourcing of those. And then there's service area initiatives that are really a departmental focus and then does not require kind of the tapping of other service areas. And then, of course, there's a capital plan initiatives. So for 2025, as is shown on the graph, we have 38 initiatives. Many of are multi-year, as you would expect, and are significant undertakings. 12 have been added from the city's 10-year strategic plan or are driven by key operational requirements. In 2024, we had a similar number of initiatives, and 12 of those were fully completed or advanced to the point where they're now more operational in nature because they've been advanced so far. A good example of that would be like the Fundy Key or something like that, where it's now really reached substantial completion and it's more minor deficiencies in nature. One has been deferred due to competing priorities, and I'll touch on that on the next slide. And so that one is performance management. In 2025, our focus is more about maintaining what we have been doing and operationally continue to support the dashboard that we have and develop and provide updates. And so this is really about taking the resources that we have, limited resources, and focusing them and reallocating them so that we can deliver results on the organization-wide transformational projects that and ERP is a good example in terms of, and our safety projects, where those are large undertakings that by doing this, we'll actually get access to more data that will result in achieving better outcomes in terms of performance management down the road. And I'll get started in the review of the initiative, starting first with transformational and catalytic growth objectives. Under the first heading, it shows how it aligns with the strategic goal, what the initiative is, and the timeline associated with it, and then what we have planned for 2025 deliverables is the last column. And the first initiative is to expedite the delivery of Affordable Housing Action Plan through the Housing Accelerator Fund. So as Council knows, within this are a series of important transformative projects. For the North End Secondary Plan in Q2, our plan is to issue a draft of what we heard, report from the community engagement, and in Q4 this year, a draft of the secondary plan. And throughout that, we plan to continue engagement with the community as well as the North End Advisory Committee. For Housing Concierge in Q1, the team hosted just this month a developers symposium, and we've also been awarding the HAF grants. And a quick shout out to the federal government for the additional $918,000 that was awarded to the city just last Friday. And regarding unlocking gentle density in Q2, there will be a promotion of CMHC's design catalog and implementation of accelerated permit review process for pre-reviewed designs, so that will help speed up development. And on the next one, in terms of continuing with projects that expedite the delivery of affordable housing, leverage land. So this quarter, we brought forward the real estate policy and combined with the enhanced GIS tool. And for e-permitting in Q2 of this year, we plan to issue an RFP for e-permitting, and before the end of the year, it's our desire to review the proposals and actually select and award the e-permitting. And regarding governance reform, progress has been made. Our plan is on Q2 of this year to bring forward recommendations for housing related to the governance reform and any decision as it relates to possible implementation. And as far as implementation of housing for all strategy, we'll start implementing the green zones. We're currently considering the bylaw work that needs to be completed to support the implementation of the red zones. This will be transformational work. Thanks to the human rights-based approach that we've taken in the Housing for All strategy, we're able to secure, as Council knows, last month, $3.5 million to support the advancement of that strategy. And as part of this, we'll be advancing the resourcing and the community outreach team. The second initiative on this slide is working with the province and stakeholders in the development of the South End and North End schools. And so we'll continue to provide project support. And a big focus this year will be on infrastructure-related work that includes the stormwater twinning through Rainbow Park, some St. James Street construction, Broad Street, Charlotte Street, a lot of work in that area of the school. And advocacy for fiscal reform and property tax reform, including transferring heavy industrial property tax. This is ongoing and a good example of something that's not fully within our control. The government of New Brunswick is working on fiscal reform. We understand with recommendations expected in 2025 and implementation in January 2026. So we'll continue to support the work underway and continue to advocate for the much needed property tax reform that includes 100% of the provincial heavy industrial property tax being returned to municipalities. We're also completing a comprehensive parking study of the South Central Peninsula that will be finalized in the next quarter. And we're looking to expand the industrial park by having RDC, Regional Development Corporation, transfer approximately 1,500 acres of land to the city. And as it relates to Sims Corner, or the west side corridor, we will continue to be involved in ongoing stakeholder discussions and look to see that advanced by DTI, who's leading it, through the conceptual design phase and so that we can address the ongoing traffic challenges there. This intersection really is a critical national and I'd say growing importance of international trade corridor. So we view it as something as Sims Corner, but I think when we look at what's going on globally, it's gaining much more in terms of the importance and the criticality of getting this project completed. In terms of procuring and implementing the modern ERP system that continues to progress to integrate our various business processes and transform decision-making, this significant resource and demand and will continue for some time, out a number of years. In 2025, we plan to both select the ERP system and begin implementation of the planning and resourcing. And as far as St. John Energy, we're continuing to look to establish the structure, the corporatization of St. John Energy, something that Council has been advocating for some time. But of course, we know that requires legislative amendment. As far as modernizing the city safety program, we're undertaking that. And that's going to be a multi-year initiative. And this year we are starting with 4 initiatives that are up on the screen. And as far as the human resources, 10-year human resources strategy, that is, we've actually completed work on that, and we're advancing it in terms of the comprehensive strategy was finalized this quarter. And next will be the creation of a multi-year implementation plan that is being developed and will advance a number of initiatives. The red arrow signifies that the priority has been moved up sooner on our plan, and so we'll begin implementation of the 2025 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan. The focus this year is on training and implementation of DEI champions, and we'll be carrying out a couple of events. And now transitioning to the service area initiatives. So a new addition this year is denoted by the star, and you'll see 12 of those as we go through here. But this one is the new arts and culture policy. So we're active in terms of the recruitment for backfilling of that position. And so work will commence later this year on that. As far as evaluating and implementing a plan for community support for East St. John, a new program manager is in place, started a couple of months ago, and the needs assessment is underway. And our plan is to bring forward recommendations in early Q4 so that they can be considered as part of the budget process. And implementing the approved actions of the city market strategic plan, while updates are provided at each of the growth committee meetings, a key part of advancing the strategic implementation or the implementation of the strategic plan is the implementation manager, a position that proved challenging to fill. However, I am pleased to announce we do have a new person starting in that position next Monday, a week from today. So we'll look forward to advancing a number of items within that strategic plan. And as far as the Central Peninsula Secondary Plan, this work is ongoing with numerous initiatives for 2025. As shown, a couple things I'll touch on quickly are the coordinate and recreational and community infrastructure around the Central Peninsula School, as I touched on earlier. A lot of that is going to be getting started this spring. And the Rainbow Park Master Plan implementation will start advancing that, as well as transforming South Market Street into an animated pedestrian-oriented laneway. And the former Barber's General Store, we want to share a vision of that space and design for the space and proceed to securing funding so that we can advance that project. And we expect to be before council in the near future on that one. Just moving along now to continued implementation of inclusion and anti-racism initiatives to attract and retain newcomers to the community. A focus in 2025 will be on the launch of emergency services awareness campaign and a complete consolidation of the operations into the transit and Rosse Avenue facilities. That continues to be underway, and 2 deliverables planned for 2025. One is that pedestrian traffic services are set to move to the Rosse Avenue facility this spring, which will formally vacate that space in Milledgeville. And then the Boar's Head Road site can be deemed surplus and real estate opportunities explored. 1/3 of this slide is that we continue to collaborate with the port on the public interface between port lands and city lands. The port has done some great public work over the past year or so, and we look forward to continuing to advance that and working jointly with them to identify other areas for improvement so that we can then advance the securing of funding opportunities. And all these 3 are new. This is in addition to the strategic plan that we reduce, or actually is pulled from the strategic plan, that we reduce the use of road salt by 5% from 2021 level while maintaining service levels. And that'll be covered a bit more in the next presentation this evening. Plant 1,000 trees in streetscapes and green spaces by 2032. Thanks to the federal government and the funding we secured for 1,150 trees just over the past month. We'll start that 3-year undertaking this year with 1/3 of the trees to be planted in 2025. Develop and implement a municipal deep energy retrofit program for municipal facilities. We're seeking funding to implement energy management systems to comply with ISO 50001. Energy Management Systems Standard. And for transforming transit, we plan to finalize all improvements of the electronic fares, including account-based ticketing and payment by tap. We also want to further improve the transit service by implementing AVL or CAD as that will help enhance communication and information sharing with the transit riders. We want to also establish a team and the appropriate governance structure to advance the 15-year strategic plan of the St. John Fire. And a key action will be to develop that multi-year implementation plan from the strategic plan, with the initial focus being on fire prevention, education, and defining service levels. And we plan to finalize Move SJ and bring that forward to council. We've also added to begin the implementation of the Move SJ goods movement strategy to balance the economic benefits and heavy truck traffic in St. John with those actions that are listed. And as we plan to upgrade 40% of the current designated accessible parking spaces to meet recognized standards for accessibility in 2025, our goal is to improve a minimum of 5 on-street parking spaces to align them with best practices and implement improvements. We plan to complete the 10-year long-term financial plan for the water utility with updated financial policies. And those documents were just before Finance Committee last week and be before Council shortly. We are going to complete the Enterprise Risk Management Project, Phase 2, which is underway, is focused on development and risk appetite governance and enterprise risk management policy. And we've completed the internal audit of the Market Square contract, and we're now moving forward in terms of implementation of the internal audit recommendations. And negotiations with fire, we're looking to hopefully ratify and sign a collective agreement in 2025. And for negotiations with outside workers, that's been underway for a couple of months now, and also looking to ratify and sign a collective agreement in 2025. Now getting close to wrapping up and moving into the capital initiatives, the first being the 5-year capital plan with that will align with the strategic plan. The first 5-year capital investment plan will cover 2026 to 2030 with an updated plan provided annually as part of the capital budget process. And this was first brought to Finance Committee last week. And we'll seek external funding for St. John Water utility infrastructure investment. This work is ongoing, and we're thankful that the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund is open, and so the team has been working on applications for funding under that. And as far as building the Main Street Transportation Corridor, which has been on our plan for a while now, we now have the highway usage permits in place thanks to the support of DTI. Both of those are now in place, and the project has been tendered and will be coming to council in the near future, hopefully to award that project. And then continuing the implementation of the 20 major traffic calming projects in accordance with the traffic calming policy. The plan in 2025 is to complete 12 traffic calming solutions and also complete projects to enhance security at City Hall facility. Focus will be on our customer service area as well as identifying and prioritizing other areas in the city. And lastly, we plan on completing another section of Harbor Passage to further connect neighborhoods via active transportation routes. The plan for 2025 is to construct the section from Riverview Avenue to Riverview Drive in West St. John. And with that, Your Worship, I know that's been a lot, but just prior to wrapping up, I'd like to take a moment to give a shout out to our great team that we have who take a lot of pride in terms of advancing the strategic initiatives of the City of St. John, are committed and focused on continuing to advance those for the city. And the recommendation is that Council receive and file this 2025 strategic initiatives update, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
We've got a question here, and I just want to say as well that it's 38, as you said, total initiatives. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It makes 2025, though, a pretty exciting year when I look at some of the things that are being done, especially the audit with Market Square. I mean, that's a long contract that's been around forever, and it's been, now really digging into all of that. So there's a lot of initiatives that go back in time as well that we're trying to bring forward to modern times and to try to bring up to date. So I do appreciate that. And then going forward as well, there's a lot of work there. So I want to thank the team as well. It's going to be exciting this 2025. But I've got a couple of questions. Councillor Harris is up first.
Thank you, Mayor. This one always comes up every year, and I've been scratching my head for 4 years since being here. But what is my role in this chair, knowing that I can't get behind your desk and understand the complexity of what you're presenting? So, like, what kind of question do you even ask? There's two questions that sort of surfaced as you talk. One, how do we cost these things? And this is not something I'm expecting from this one, but it kind of dovetails into the second one, which is, how often are we going to revisit this? Right now, I look at that and I see the alignments, I see the importance, and I see how some of the conversations around this table have pushed things up or put them down. But costing them is an exercise that I can imagine would be difficult. But even just rough dart throws to say, look, Initiative 23, we thought it was 1.2 million. Here's the actual cost between staff out. Like, it's the for me, it's the understanding of how much staff hours has to go into this, which is baked in our cost because we have to pay wages. But it's also the opportunity cost of them not doing something else. So I don't necessarily have a methodology for you, but in my chair, understanding that cost and how we spend money on these initiatives, how much of it's passive, where it's just staff hours waiting for an email back from DTI before a flurry of activity all of a sudden starts up, versus, hey, we haven't heard back from DTI in 6 months about this, so we don't have the work to do. We're still waiting. Those types of pieces, like, how do we analyze that from this chair around governance? That's just a question I've had overall. I know that you can't lend into that, but then I guess it does look, if we are going to revisit it this year, when would that be? And is it possible to come back with some costing forecasts around what these are, where we expect them to go over the next, because some of them are multi-year. Do we expect the cost of this to balloon? Do we have a good view of what this is going to cost in 28 when we finish it? That's it for me. I'm fully supportive. I mean, this is a crap ton of work here. But just trying to understand some of those dynamics, I guess, is the hard part.
Yeah, thanks for that. So in terms of the time frame, and typically it's every 3 months or so that I come back and like to provide these updates just to keep current in terms of where we're headed. So that would be the timeline that I'd be targeting. And as far as the cost, maybe if I can just understand better, is it, because we go through this as part of like the operating and capital budget cycle, and this would get it, like all these projects would be embedded as part of the operating and capital. However, I appreciate the comment as it relates to lost opportunity cost when we're continuing to pursue something and maybe not getting traction on it. So is it the latter?
Sorry, I know I should put my mic off. That's might have to turn back on there, clerk, sorry. That one would be more important to me. Like, how long have we been pushing for industrial tax reform, and there's somebody who's still pushing send on a dang email, and they are not getting the response back that we want, right? Like, that, I know I'm being a bit facetious with that, but I'm also not. Like, I'm sure there are initiatives where we are asking you to go do things, and it's not getting results, but yet somebody still has the task of doing it. And hey, there's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. So that would be the more important cost to understand. But also, if we have capital costs here, tying it to the operation budget, and maybe this is to push to Councillor Sullivan and the Finance Committee, when the finance committee is looking at this budget, how much of a dovetail is there between the strategic initiatives plan? What kind of process goes into that? Because I guess that may be happening and I just don't know about it. So yeah.
Yeah, that clarifies, maybe, in terms of tracking our costs and how many hours were spent on a particular issue, that could be challenging, but in terms of clarity around how long we have been advocating for something, like a particular initiative, like you say, in terms of heavy industrial property tax or corporatization of St. John Energy or those items, we could probably add that in terms of how many years we've been asking for it. Yes. If that would be helpful. Okay.
Councillor Redwan, you had a question?
Yes, I do. I have a few, Mayor, but I just, because Councillor Harris mentioning this, I wanted to mention we are looking at a service-based budget, right? Which would definitely help with that. So for example, if we hit the strat plan goal of clearing 75% of sidewalks within a certain period of time, how much money does that look like to increase it to that number is kind of like what staff are working on, but it's a lot of information, I think, to gather. So how long it's going to take to do it, I don't know. But few questions, CAO McGovern. We've been talking performance management for a while, so I'm just kind of wondering how you see us getting there in the end, right across the board. I always go back and look at the strat plan just to let you know, and when you're bringing this forward, go, okay, where are we and where are we going? It does say that we're supposed to do 7 major continuous improvement projects by 2027. So I'm just wondering if you have any idea what we're going to do for that, and maybe we're not getting into it until 2027. And then I had a bit of concern when I looked at when it comes to accessibility, the parking plan, and we're doing the parking plan now. I don't know if we're going to take Ability New Brunswick up on their free offer to do a parking study for us as well. But the accessible parking spaces, doing 40% of them to meet the ones that we already have and not doing new. And then we're supposed to, as far as the strat plan goes, get to 60% of APS signals at the intersections by 2028. My concern, and I'll share with you, and it's really a huge concern, right now the province is going through changing and updating accessibility legislation, and I'm worried that if we're not getting ahead of it, that we're going to be forced to do it. So I'd love for us to kind of be like the shining light in the province of look at what the city's changing, look at what the city's doing. And I know Ability NB, they'll go and measure everything out and say, here's all these recommendations. So, and they're only doing that for free until the 1st of April. So I was kind of hoping that we would take that on. But anyway, if you can respond to any of that.
Yeah, in terms of any of the larger capital investments, obviously when we do street reconstruction, we look for those opportunities and make the investment. And then more strategically, if it's outside of that, the capital construction, that's something that we would look to have embedded as part of our 5-year capital program that Commissioner Fogan and our Chief City Engineer, Mike Baker, are putting together. Yeah.
What about performance management?
Yeah, so in terms of performance management, right now, we are at a point where we need better quality data. And so we don't have that with an old Naviline system that dates back 25 years that is very limited in its functionality. And that's why we see the importance of redeploying the resources from a project like that to really embed them more as part of the ERP and the safety systems, which will have data-rich environments on their own. And once we get those systems operational, then we can go back and really expand our performance management. But without that, we're kind of at a ceiling and not able to make more progress.
Do you think that there's any room to do some new accessible parking spaces? Because, I mean, we only have about 25 uptown out of over 5,000 and 10,000 people in the city with placard cards. So, I'd like to see us not just fixing what we have, but also adding some new. And it it's paint, it's time. I get it. It's paint, it's a bit of signage. And I mean, like Ability New Brunswick would pretty much put the plan together, so.
So yeah, on that, we have a minimum of 5 is what we proposed for this year. Just understanding staff limitations, so we have proposed a minimum of 5 on-street parking spaces. That would be larger, aligned with best practices to really expand those. Yeah.
And I think the APS stuff is going well. I just don't know how close we are to the goal, but every time we're looking at the busier intersections, then they're getting implemented. So I think we're probably getting close, but I have no idea.
I don't have
So-
that information right on hand, but it's something
Okay.
we could circle back with.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for questions, so I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Do we need a little quick break? Are we good? The what? There's just one item left. Okay, are we good? All right. Next item, City Clerk.
Your worship, I realized that we skipped over one very quick item, so
We did?
it should only take a moment, but we received a letter from a proponent under 9.3
Oh, right.
for rezoning to withdraw the application.
Right.
And so if council could consider a motion which would read that council accept the request from the proponent to withdraw their application to rezone 0 Bayside Drive and that the public hearing be canceled.
Councillor Darling, thank you. Councillor Harris, thank you. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you. And next is another staff presentation, item 12.2 on your agenda, and it's with respect to winter plowing results and improvements.
Over to you, Director O'Reilly. You know how we love this subject.
Sure. Don't know if Commissioner would like to do a quick introduction or?
Oh, yes, sorry. The Commissioner is. Commissioner, you can hold
Thank you, Your Worship. I will keep it brief, but so normally you would see this presentation somewhere around October or November as we start to gear up for the next winter season. But for a number of reasons, we thought it important to bring this update now. This has obviously been a very challenging winter for many people, including our operations. The nature of the winter and the types of storms we got really made it challenging. We had some equipment challenges on top of that. So we decided to bring this forward just to sort of recap what our experience was this particular winter. No real decisions necessary tonight, but we are going to be looking at investments needed to bring our capabilities in line with what our service deliveries are in time for next year. So that's going to be kind of part and parcel of the budgeting process for this year. So there will be more to come as part of that process, but for now I'll turn it over to Director O'Reilly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, so as the Commissioner mentioned, certainly this winter was a tougher. Certainly the previous winter, we had 3 measured storms. This past winter, we had 6. Measured storms, about 7 centimeters of snow or more. In addition to those 6 storms, we had a number of smaller snow events which required responses by our team, and a number of days where temperatures reached below -10, which is the point at which salt becomes inactive. We had 2 notable storms this past winter. One that occurred right between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, the most severe storm of the winter. And of course, that's challenging because the amount of snow, but it's also that time of year, right? A lot of people in the community are trying to move around, but also we have our own team, whether it's public works, other departments that were required to work extra hours over the holiday season to open up our streets and sidewalks. In addition to that, the very last storm of the year was more of a traditional type St. John storm where we had a little bit of snow, rain, and then freezing temperatures, which locked in a lot of ice on streets and sidewalks. So in addition to the weather, there are some other compounding factors which caused some issues this past winter. Equipment was a big challenge for us, particularly on sidewalk plowing. On average, about only half of our sidewalk plows are operating. We have a fleet of 11 sidewalk plows, and only half are operating. There are several cases we only have about 25% of those pieces of gear operating at one time. We always had salt this winter, but we came critically low in salt a couple of times this past winter because of the nature of the weather. And it's an issue where there's one supplier that supplies municipalities around, so everybody's looking at the exact same time. So that was a challenge for us as well. In addition to that, we found some significant issue with compliance of on-street parking this past winter. The motto is, and the reality is, you can't plow if there's a car in the way. So those are some of the compounding factors that impacted us. What's on the slide now are two pictures. One to the left is Germain Street. This was a couple days after that infamous February 16th storm, and it was a couple days after switchover day. And we had that street and others in the uptown area lined with parking on both sides of the street, which really caused an impact with us being able to get streets cleared. In addition to that, I have a little video showing here to give you a bird's eye view of what it's like for one of our operators to plow a street with a large amount of parking on it. So this is one of our typical tandem trucks with a plow in the front, the orange plow, and then you'll see here it's a wing plow on the side. And so in order to fit between those cars, which happened quite a bit this winter, that wing plow had to be raised up out of the way. I'm going to come back to that wing plow in a couple of slides, so just remember that thing, but had to raise up the plow. Oh, I hit a button, didn't I? Must have. Oh no, you can almost hear the metal scraping, right? But he didn't. He's one of our better operators, but you can just see how difficult it is to get through some of these streets. So in addition to challenge with plowing streets, we also had some significant challenge with parking on city sidewalks. So you see up on the screen now, again, two more pictures, two vehicles that were completely blocking sidewalks in the city. Those cars weren't parked there the day before. You can see there's snow on both of them and actually snow piled around them. In fact, that green vehicle was there for at least a month straight in that very same position. So again, you can see how that impacts our ability to get sidewalks cleared. So at the end of the day, with all those challenges, these are the service levels over the 6 storms relative to streets and sidewalks. So streets in blue and sidewalks in green relative to each one of those storms. So overall, the street plowing was relatively okay. We hit 90% over each and every storm, which is a pretty good level of service. But you see the green bars are quite lower than that. And you can see, again, the results, which I don't need to tell you, don't need to tell the public. We certainly challenged to meet our sidewalk deliverables. So to put this into perspective, so in 5 of the 6 storms, except for that first one, pedestrians were delayed from using at least 65 kilometers of sidewalk longer than what our service standards call for. So most pedestrians, a couple kilometer trip, so 65 kilometers, it did impact quite a few pedestrians. So that's kind of the woes and the challenges that we face so far this winter, but of course, as staff and as council, we never accept challenges, right? We always try to improve and get things done better. So over the next couple of slides, you're going to see some opportunities that staff are putting forward, and they actually have done this past winter, but we'll be doing in future years to improve the level of service within the capacity that we have before us. But then there'll be some ask the council or some considerations the council at the end. The reality is this past winter was a tougher one, but I've been in the business now for about 19 years, and I count about 5 or 6 winters that were relatively the same as this past one. So it's not out of the realm that we can have a similar storm in a winter in future years. So we definitely want to improve. So I mentioned earlier some of the compliance issues around on-street parking, and that was mainly related to our 2 overnight parking bans. We had issues. Our parking team was very good with being able to write tickets on vehicles that are parked during the overnight parking bans, but what really became a challenge is that actually getting vehicles towed off the street. That was a big issue for us, just with the amount of towing resources that were external that were available. So with that level of impact, which really impacted our service delivery, really changed strategies halfway through the winter. So we moved from the overnight parking bans to more of a street-by-street parking ban where we had to sign a street. You can see the sign on the left-hand picture. And we did that during the daytime mainly. So we covered more or less streets, but we're able to be more effective. The compliance levels went up significantly. Again, it's during the day, people can probably see the signs better, but also it was isolated to a street. So typically the streets adjacent to it, people can still find parking. So you can see the two pictures to the right just shows, and this is Tartan Street. We did the park and ban on Tartan Street during the day. Just with a full opportunity to gain access to the street, we can do, you know, full snow removal operation like the top right-hand corner shows, and then we can put a grader in there afterwards and do a good job at cutting the ice as well. So this was very effective relative to the overnight park and bans. So if we do run into issues in future years, we'll be using those daytime park and bans as well. All right. Okay. The next topic I want to talk about in terms of improvement is something called, it's called winging a sidewalk. So I mentioned, remember that wing on the street plow a couple of slides back. So we do have smaller sidewalk plows. And again, as I mentioned, we had quite a bit of an issue with those being down quite a bit this winter. So those sidewalk plows are smaller, so they can fit on sidewalks, very effective that way, but they're definitely a lot less powerful than the bigger street plows. Winging a sidewalk with a street plow is possible. In fact, we do it across about 11 kilometers of sidewalks within the city already. So the street plows can wing sidewalks a lot more effectively and faster than a sidewalk plow can. Besides that, high level of efficiency, we also get rid of a pile of snow that occurs between the street and the sidewalk. So you see on the left is our traditional process of clearing the street and clearing the sidewalk. There's a pile of snow left between, and it's that famous battle between where that snow ends up, and it's usually the pedestrians that lose, right, in the end. That's a challenge for us. But you see on the right is an example of winging the sidewalk first with the street plow, which gets rid of that pile of snow between the street and the sidewalk. So again, it gets rid of it. It opens up the curb line for drainage. And it also improves accessibility for pedestrians at both transit stops for the ramps, as well as at crosswalks. So we talked about this as a team, and we're going to challenge ourselves to triple the amount of sidewalks that we wing first with the street plow next season. So we're going to go from 11 kilometers to at least 33 kilometers next winter season to provide better level service to the community. In addition to that, so another issue, again, I mentioned with respect to lower sidewalk deliverables is the age of our street plows. 9 of 11 of our street plows are about 3/4 of the way through their useful life. So it's okay to have a couple of your equipment towards the end of its useful life, but having that many certainly led to what happened this past winter in terms of having so many that were down. So we are going to be smoothing out that life cycle of our sidewalk plows, so they're not all towards the end of the useful life. And we are going to be bringing back recommendations to replace 3 sidewalk plows in 2025 and replacing a number of them over coming years to get the life cycles back into a smoother curve. In addition to that, we've done this with respect to our street plowing operation, is if we have a couple of street plows that had some life left to them, we actually kept them. And as long as the maintenance was relatively okay, we hung on to them, and they were used as spares for when one of our main street plows were down. We're going to do the same thing with respect to our sidewalk plows, where if 1 or 2 of them, of the 3 that are going to be replaced, still have a bit of life left, we're going to hang on to them. And again, as long as the maintenance costs are relatively low, there'll be a bit of a spare for our sidewalk plow operation. Coordination has been extremely important over the last number of years. So we do use a similar philosophy as what the EMO uses. So we bring multiple departments together. It's obviously public works, but our parking team, communications, customer service, and our fleet team basically sit in a room almost daily during the height of some of these winter storms. And we go through an entire planning cycle, talk about the previous day, what's going to happen the next day, what needs to improve, and put our planning efforts forward. I counted up on one of these days during the height of the winter, we went through 17 different planning items just in one of these meetings alone. So that level of coordination does take a toll. There's staff from all these departments that work extra hours, put other work aside in order to focus on weather when it becomes difficult during the winter. In addition to that, we need to put more and more of attention onto our preseason preparedness. The equipment, the people that plow streets and sidewalks is the exact same people and equipment that do all the work in the summertime, patching potholes, cleaning up, mowing grass, you name it, we do it in the summer. The challenge is that we need to be ready for that first snowfall of the year, and we never know when it's going to come. We need a good break between finishing the construction season activities and being ready for that first snowfall. It doesn't happen overnight. The equipment can't be changed over, and the people can't be ready to go. So again, we need that continued support from the community to give us that time to get ready for the winter season. In addition to that, I mentioned the salt issues. So we did put in place a contingency salt supplier this past winter, which we're going to rely on if we do get to those critical levels again. But as the CAO mentioned, and we are looking at this in 2025, to continue to decrease the requirement to use salt. So we're going to do more training this year. We're going to look at written procedures as to when salt is required. And we're also going to look at a particular type of equipment on each of our plows where we put brine into the salt. We're going to do more work to make sure that that equipment's operational for the start of the year. So get the supply up, but also reduce the amount of salt we have to use on the roads to begin with. And the other thing that we're going to look at too, which is this is going to require a bit of council support later on in 2025, but we're going to look at the issue with on-street parking. And really two topics around that is we're going to look at the fine amounts that people pay. Right now, I think it's about $30. We're going to see how that can be increased to, again, ensure better compliance for future storms. And in addition to that, we're going to see what type of breadth of authority our parking enforcement staff has to actually tow vehicles. So I mentioned you see vehicles, sit on sidewalks, parked illegally during the daytime. The tickets are good because they obviously will promote compliance the next time around, but it doesn't help us during the height of the storm. We need to get those vehicles off, and we need to be able to have staff that can do that to their greatest ability. So our parking team and GCO will be coming back later on the year with some specific recommendations on fine amounts and parking enforcement, but it's something we definitely have on our radar. So all those things pretty much on the previous slides are all things that staff's working on, but in addition to that, it's that ask of council, really two main questions. We have a set of service standards for both streets and sidewalks. They're up on there, a little bit small to see, but for sidewalks and streets, are those appropriate? We looked at some jurisdictional scans and we provide a pretty good level of service with respect to other jurisdictions. So should we look at adjusting those service standards so we have a better chance of meeting them? And then the flip side of that is, do we need to look closely at our resource levels to make sure that we have a better chance to meet our service standards no matter what they are going forward? So it's really two of those questions. With that direction, if you support it, we'll go back and look at those two categories of solutions and come back to council later on 2025 with very specific recommendations. Your Worship.
Thank you, Director O'Reilly. There's a lot of good news in that. The equipment that you're going to be looking at replacing and, increasing the amount of sidewalks as well that will be plowed. So there's lots of good news in there. We do have, we love chatting with you about this. So we've got I've got a few councillors here. Councillor Ogden is up first. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, when you redo a street, like there's streets in the north end that the asphalt's gone, or when you put in a new road or anything, could you put the sidewalk out to the street and put the tree on the inside? Because I know a lot of trees that we've planted over the years, we learned a lesson not to put them too close to the road because the salt really destroys our trees. Yeah. And when we're spending a lot of money on trees, then what's happening is they're being killed. Yeah. And could we put the sidewalk this way and put the tree there? And I just think it would be much better for the trees. I mean, one of the things that we need to do as a city is become more environmentally friendly and have a bigger urban forest. That's a big attraction to a lot of people when they go to cities. And, we could really sell ourselves better as a city with a larger urban forest. So could we put the trees on the inside and put the sidewalks on the out?
That's possible.
It would help your wings, that's all.
Yeah. Everything's a trade-off in life, right? Including in terms of our right-of-way. The competing interests for having basically a median between the street and the sidewalk is you have a bit of space for pedestrian safety, right, that's available to you. And if you're going to have that medium, you might as well throw a couple of trees in there too, right?
Right.
So it's a trade-off, right? I mean, I'll throw this back up on the screen here to the right. That picture to the right shows the pole on the back side of the sidewalk, right, which gives us the access to the curb line.
Right.
But again, it's that trade-off of having your pedestrians walk right against the side of the street. Everything's a trade-off. But to answer your
Wings
question,
would be
yes,
good on that street, right?
Pardon?
Wings would be good on that street.
Yeah.
And they're much more efficient than our little machines.
Correct. Yeah. But it's a trade-off for sure in all those competing interests.
Well,
but it is possible.
we could wrap people in safety gear when they walk and then have our trees taken care of, and we could wing everything.
We could. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe's up next.
Yeah, Tim, swing it back to recommendations, right? No, it's not that one. The one with a whole bunch of stuff. Anyways.
That one?
I represent the South End, as you're well aware. We got the smallest, skinniest streets in the city, other than the lower North End, right? And my area is the one that's called most times for, get off the street, you go to the South End, you go, which is great. But I know for a fact, when you get one tow truck to do a night in the South End, that's a joke. You can't do it. And I know for a fact that's all you're getting. And then when you get two tow trucks for the next night, and if you're real happy, you get 3 tow trucks. Well, there's no way in the world these plow guys can plow these streets. I'll give you where the mayor lives, Germain Street, Pripe, or Horsfield, or Harding. I mean, I know for a fact, and I wrote the license number on Canterbury Street, a car that was there for 3 snowstorms and never moved and never got a ticket, was never towed. And I know that for a fact. And I don't care when anybody says I'm wrong. I know it. So what I'm saying to you is, I don't know if the tow company has a contract with the city. I'm sure it does. Does it restrict you from getting other tow trucks from either Quispam or other tow trucks in the city?
Yes, it does. And we've actually reached pretty far to get other tow companies. The issue is not the tow trucks, it's the compound. So the towing company has to have a proper compound where they can store vehicles.
Correct.
And that's the limiting factor.
Well, no, we got 2 of them. We got McAllister Drive and we got Mattawamne's Road. We can put vehicles in McAllister Drive for a joke, our Mike's compound out there. I mean, you're defeating your own purpose, Tim. You're saying that you can increase the fines. People pay fines. But the driver driving the tow truck, trying to do a decent job, and it's 3:30 in the morning, and you try to get him around the car, and so you put a ticket on it. Doesn't solve the problem. The car's got to be towed. And when you tow him the first time to one of our compounds or somewhere, and he pays the $60 a day, I think what they charge now, and whatever they charge to tow it, I bet you that car's not there the next time. But a $30 ticket, pay it. Yeah. And that's what's wrong.
The issue is, the city's not in the towing business and in the compound business. These towing companies have all the proper requirements and insurance requirements in place to properly store these vehicles until they be collected. There's a very specific requirement in place. We can look into it, but like I said, at the end of the day, we're not in the towing business right now, and therefore we can't tow vehicles nor establish a compound to properly take care of them until the owner picks it up.
Well, what kind of a contract do you have that allows a contract to supply one tow truck on a night that you brought X number of employees in at double time, wherever it is, and brought all the communication people into work, and you notified through all the media, we're closing the South End for traffic, and we're opening the compounds, which you did, Vulcan Street and there. I'm around, and the cars all stay in the street. They don't get moved.
It's the same problem as the earlier discussion about streets. We can put in place more stringent requirements, about minimum requirements for tow trucks on a service call. A, we're going to get any towing companies that can actually commit to that, and B, what's going to be the price we're going to pay in order to achieve that. So right now, we have a towing contract in place. We don't have limits as to how many towing companies they can provide. Well, what I can tell you is this: when we switch to the daytime operation, the problem with the towing companies, they're facing the same thing we are, right? They're having staffing shortages. They're having the inability to have staff that'll actually stay overnight to tow, right? So when we actually switched over to the daytime operation, instead, the towing company that we contract with actually were able to get more operators, more towing operators, because they work during the daytime. Now, we didn't actually need them because they all complied, but they were more available to us. So everything's a trade-off on cost versus supply in the marketplace. I'll tell you right now, we placing calls as soon as this issue started to crop up this winter. We were looking for every solution we could.
So you are telling me that the contract doesn't allow for other tow trucks to come and tow?
Even if it did, the issue is that there's a compound that a towing company has to be responsible for, which right now, as far as I know, there's one towing company that has a compound like that.
That's right. Anyways, to me, like you want, and I agree with everything you got there.
Yeah.
You're totally right. I mean, to have one street plow working and the rest of them sitting out the barns out there where the buses go, is unfortunate. We need new equipment, and we got to buy it, and we got to spend the money. And we got the people to do the work. But when we go outside of our own people, Local 18 and you people, we don't have cooperation to be successful at what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's just no way a plow driver can drive over the top of a car, period. And until that happens, till that's rectified, your system's never going to improve that much. That's all I'm saying. It ain't you guys, and it ain't Local 18. Yeah. It's something that we got to reach and touch outside.
The only other point I'll make is that, and this is why we do this every fall too, is we reach out to the community and say, this is how you can help us. Don't push snow on the streets and sidewalks. Get your cars off the street. The city is a community, and the community has to participate in that, right? We need the cooperation of our residents to get their cars off the street when they ask them to. That's a big part of it too. So the more we can get the message out, the more we're going to have compliance. We get some fines up, that might create some more compliance. And they're looking at enforcement too.
Thank you. The solution there is that the fine needs to be the exact same cost as having your car towed and put in the compound. That'll cure it. Next up is Councillor Harris.
Thank you. One question I couldn't answer for a resident this year. I'm a little bit ornery with residents who like to complain about our plowing. I often remind them that we have a lot more in place here in the city than a lot of other cities do, which you look at cities like Edmonton, which require residents to plow to shovel their own stoop and to shovel their own business. And if you don't, there's compliance measures. But there was one question that was raised by a resident this year I couldn't answer, and I thought it was a good one. What do we do with high occupancy buildings where there are multiple exits from the building going on to street front? So I'll give you an example, the Admiral Beatty, which has two major flow-throughs or outs that go onto the City of St. John's sidewalk direct. Mm-hmm. And there's a few hundred people in that building. And there's a back parking lot, which I understand. There's a back door, which is a muster space. In case of an evacuation of those buildings, in case of an issue, what's the protocol there for engaging with the city? Is it just a matter of calling customer service? Do we have a service level difference to high occupancy buildings? Or does it just fit into the sidewalk?
I guess maybe your question's more along the lines of because obviously we can't jump on the spot when there's a situation.
I understand.
At the end of the day, and that's where it goes to the recommendations, right? It's like what level of service can we provide, right? And so there are going to be times right now where we're going to be, especially in the south end, we're going to be doing winging operations, doing street clearing operations, we're going to be pushing snow right into the accesses of properties. There's some and you mentioned about higher standards, right? There's some municipalities that actually have a special plow on their street plows that actually extend and clear the driveways and raise and lower, right? Again, that's something we could look at, but
Oh,
the
nobody
level-
wants me to raise their taxes to get it.
Well, that's it.
I
right?
understand.
So, yeah, so it's a matter of what level of service you can provide, but there are going to be times, you know, and I know contractors use or in private, those are, you know, those properties where they get their own contractors in the plow, they might have to return, right, to plow afterwards.
Yeah, I guess this was a question that came from somebody who lives there and works sort of for the building a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's other buildings like that. So it sounds to me like we don't have a special role to play with high occupancy buildings, which is understandable, and that can be my answer.
Okay.
Citizen engagement. That to me is the missing piece up there. I'm happy to increase fines for people who don't comply. I'm happy to talk about service levels. We've sort of been talking around the service level for 2 years now since we've been doing our winter management review. But where is it that citizens can engage to make this work better? I think that's a piece, like if we're asking people to do a better job, let's give them the job. Let's like show them what we hope for. What does that response level look like for? What is, you know, what are we actually asking for people? How far do you clear all of that? Because I think there is some ambiguity about what is the city's sort of role? What are we going to do that we can set the floor to versus, you know, what does it look like when you have both working together well? Because you see it uptown, you see it in the business area where there's some businesses that just pay a really close attention to what's in front of their business. It's in their self-interest to do so, of course.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the question mark we have to answer at some point in time. How do we want citizens to engage in snow removal? Okay. Because it's one thing to say, don't throw it on the road. It's another thing to say, throw it here.
Okay.
You know, or can you get out and get this done by 7:30 in these areas? If it looks like this is our ideal. We're asking residents to commit to this. Stuff like that is a piece that we're missing, I find.
Yeah. And again, I mentioned every fall, we do focus on citizen engagement for the following year. We can take some of those ideas, maybe a bit more specific in our discussions with the community about how specifically they can help in certain situations. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Radwan, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, thanks for the presentation. I got to tell you, I always have so many questions that come up. Since becoming a counselor, I can't tell you how much I hate snow when I see it. So, but I gotta say, so the big question has been, why doesn't the city just tow vehicles? And obviously you've touched base on that a little bit, but I didn't really realize that we were paying a towing company. What kind of money are we paying them?
Well, actually, I don't know the amount, but like I say, they actually get some revenue as well, right? Once they tow the vehicles into their compound. I just don't have the amounts off the top of my mind.
Well, and that's what I thought is, you know, they're making money off of when people get their vehicles out. Another complaint that I've had that I realize is transit that oversees it is people complaining that the transit shelters were not getting cleared out. And I know from talking that that's 2 people that are out doing that, but it was really challenging this year. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I absolutely do believe that we need to enhance snow plowing, and finding efficiencies is really important, obviously. So I love the ideas that you have today. I was a little concerned in the packet that you said that we might possibly get the equipment. Do you think that we're going to have a hard time to get the equipment before next season?
Well, I have some information. It's going to be likely about 6 months to have the equipment arrive. We're in the process now of just making sure the specs are good, ready to put out. But right now, we're expecting to have those 3 pieces of equipment before the start of next winter. That's our expectation right now.
But how easy, you know, just if you wouldn't mind sharing with the public, like how easy is it to ticket vehicles? Like what kind of staffing does that take? Like, you know, I think that I understand, but I constantly get these questions. And I'm like, well, that takes a lot of staff time.
Yeah, I mean, typically, for example, of an overnight parking ban, and it's our parking commission or parking team, typically have 2 enforcement officers that come out And they can do a lot. They can do upwards of like 80 or 100 vehicles ticketing, especially in a concentrated area in a given night for us. So and there's no issues with ticketing. Like they get around, especially the south end, and they can do over 100 vehicles between the two of them over the course of a night. So there's no real issue, I guess, on capacity. We get a lot of support from the park team to do that. We need to look at the fine amounts to promote more voluntary compliance in the future. And then again, as I mentioned, it's the actual towing. Because like I say, at the end of the day, the fines are okay, but it doesn't help us get the street cleared when we need to get them cleared, right?
And I'd be happy to get those fines up, especially Silverstone. Like, what a nightmare to see vehicles just sitting there because they're trying to clear out the parking lot in Heather Way and just sitting there for hours at a time. It's crazy. But you know what, Tim, I do want to say, like, I'm definitely interested in investing more in snow clearing because accessibility is not just a want for people, that's a need. And people were not able to go to work and things because of sidewalk not being cleared. I know the challenges that you have, but it's also a challenge for the residents.
Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to be quick, Tim. First of all, I love the snowbank signs. I mean, it's simple. It goes back to the day when you didn't have an excuse, and I like it. With regards to towing cars, I don't think, there must be an easier way to pick up a car, move it in behind the snowplow, park it, put a boot on it and a sign saying, we'll be back tomorrow. If it's still here, we're towing it. And you've got to pay this fine before the boot comes off. Like, why take a half an hour or an hour to take it to a compound when all you got to do is get it behind the plow and let the plow go ahead?
And we'll come back with a comprehensive report specific for towing. My understanding for booting, we're actually not allowed to do it. That's my understanding. Right? But look, we'll look at that idea, which you just mentioned of, can we tow it to the adjacent street that's already been cleared? I mean, we'll take a look at that as an option, but I just don't know the responsibilities once they take possession, if they have a legal requirement to keep possession of that until because again, at the end of the day, you also got to let all the owners know where their vehicles are, right?
Well, I mean, you can put it 4 yards behind the plow. It doesn't have to be on a different street.
We'll take a look at that.
Just something to look at. The other thing is missed streets. Twice out of 6 storms. I've had 2 courts that were missed 5 days before they got plowed. And I was thinking, what's going on here? What's going on? Well, they were plowed. No, they weren't plowed. They were missed.
Yeah.
So how can we track the plows so that we know they're not missing any streets?
Yeah. So again, I was trying to keep my report relatively concise, but the other thing that we are working on, which I include in the report, is we have, it's AVL GPS units on all of our vehicles. We have a piece of software that we're just about there to be able to use for our purposes to get an adequate report to us, certain amount of hours after the storm the complete streets are green, the incomplete streets are red, right? It'll show us which streets we actually missed. We're just on that verge now, and we'll be implementing that for next season to be able to give us a better indication of streets that we did actually miss. I mean, so I mean, once in a while we have a different operator on a run and they happen to miss a street, that happens. And like I say, this tool, which we've perfected and we're going to roll it for next year, will help us identify those missed streets better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 2 quick ones. Hills with no sidewalk. If you go down, and I'm going to use Montgomery Crescent as an example, no sidewalks, parking on one side, it's a hill, it's a priority 4, and the kid's got to walk down that hill to get to school. Is there no way that we could say, look, in that situation, we've got to make that a priority 1 or 2, or we're going to have to plow a sidewalk? Because you've got a lot of people now from Fort Howe going down those, and they're all over the city. This isn't the only one. So I think we need to kind of rethink the danger zones and say, yeah, it's a priority 4, but you know what? There's a lot of kids in danger that are walking in the middle of the road.
So we'll take that when we come back for sure, right? The only comment I'll make at this point is, and I know we use the word adjust in our recommendation, right? But right now with current resources, if we decide we're going to take X number of streets and make them a priority 4 to priority 1, how are we going to achieve that with the current resources? And that means taking a look at other streets that are a priority 1 and moving down to a priority 4. Right? It will be a give and take type thing. But if that's something that's important to council, we can come back and say, when what do we need to increase priorities at a certain level, but under current resource levels, it's a trade-off right now.
I'm just dropping the seeds
No,
here.
I know.
And the last thing I'm going to say is, one of my pet peeves is when you plow the streets and then the sidewalks, you plow the sidewalks and then you plow the street, and the sidewalk gets all the snow off the street. And, it's, I like the wing idea, but you can't wing everywhere,
They can't.
right? So that's another
Yeah.
thing that,
Yeah. So
other
the-
than that, look, you guys are improving every year.
Yeah.
It's good, but I know we can do better. Thanks very much.
Councillor Sullivan?
Sorry, City of St. John, we're winging it. I'm glad you mentioned the AVL, but we can see how, and this harkens back to earlier CAO, performance management and data, right? Like some of these things are in performance management, why aren't jobs getting completed for a number of reasons? But we need that data. We've invested in the technology in our vehicles. We should be using that technology to make sure we're achieving these service levels. So I'm glad you talked about that. Communication. If there is a water break, we are very good at advising the neighborhood there's a water problem. St. John Energy, they are out there. If there's a power outage, we can't service you right now. Here's the expected time. I don't know if I've seen notification, sidewalk plows are down, these neighborhoods are going to be late. And, it's going to be, I would rather be ahead of it than get the complaints afterwards of why. So just please take away. On your recommendations, and I certainly get it, if you can pop the recommendation slide up there again. But, as we go through the year, it's funny, I never see a service group come before us and say, service budget decrease. Certainly fleet and whatever's in our reserves and staff are really good at looking at those and saying, we need these vehicles, maybe these vehicles can wait. I mean, we've got money put aside for fleet. Yes, it's important that we're looking at those resources now because the lead time to have them ready. But just, and this is probably less for you, Tim, and more for the CAO. But we can't just keep saying budget increases in isolation as we go through the year and go, yeah, council thinks there should be a budget increase. Yeah, council thinks there should be a budget increase. And then it comes budget time and there are all these council motions that have passed on budget increases, and either it's a big takeaway somewhere else or it ends up being a tax hike, which has been mentioned. So certainly investigating resources and referring to budget, perfectly fair, Mr. CAO. But yeah, please, Mr. CAO, keep us away from budget increases in the middle of the season. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just talk about planting seeds. I know we're not in the towing business, but what if we were in the towing business for 4 months out of the year or 5 months out of the year, and we do have a couple of compounds, and we have 4 or 5 tow trucks? Because my experience with towing companies, they make money. So could it be a potential source of revenue and to help solve us a problem? Just planting a seed.
Yeah. Seed planted.
Sounds good. All right, I'll wrap it up, Tim, for us. When I read the report, like I said, there's a lot of good news in it, and a lot of initiatives. But when I look at it, I say, that's all logistics of plowing, but how do we look at the strategy of it? So we've got about 10% of your population's living on the peninsula. We know that's got the highest density. We know that it subsidizes the rest of the city when it comes to per capita providing services. But I'm going to say probably 3/4 of it is all Zone 4 for the sidewalks, which is crazy. because that's where all your walkers are. I'll give you a quick example, like from King on Canterbury, King to Princess would be Zone 1 on Canterbury. Princess to Duke is Zone 4, and then Duke down is Zone 2 because the high school is there. So like it needs to be better connected with routes. So I'd like to see sidewalk plowing follow populations, because where there's density, I think that's where you should definitely have good sidewalk clearing. I noticed in the report it said police resources are sometimes unavailable to support towing where police are the only authority. That's an issue for us. So like we have bylaws that say we'll tow, but if we can't do it because of and you talked a little bit about that extended authority that we don't have, can we negotiate for that authority? And the same with parking on the sidewalks is a huge pet peeve of mine. There's a car parked on the sidewalk every day on Germain Street in front of where Taco Pico used to be. And, you know, it's police territory because it's in the Motor Vehicle Act, and our enforcement people for parking can't deal with it because it's not on the street. So that's a huge issue for us. The removal of snow. I'm just curious if we've ever thought about doing that. And maybe there's not enough snow to look at getting, when we had that giant snowstorm when the Norton Council was on the job, we had to get the big giant snow blower in. I don't know if we need one that big, but I don't know if there's need for that, because I find on the peninsula, there's no place for the snow to go because of the buildings are on the sidewalks. And so where does that snow go? It's a real problem for us. Parking fines, I think, need to be increased. I said that if you're charged the same as what it would be cost to have your car towed, then, I mean, I think would create a cure. I know you can register for notification. So when the parking bans are, and I've put that out on my Facebook page so that people will register to get those notifications. And we often, we struggle here at budget time because we talk about, should we drop the tax rate? We want to relieve the burden on the taxpayer, but then how do we balance that with getting the equipment need? I mean, you're trying to work with equipment that really, 3 out of 11, that's a significant portion of your equipment that's, dysfunctional. So we always struggle with that, but maybe we should be doing our budget in February. No, if we do it in February, then we're going to put everything into snow plowing. So no, that's not going to work either. And for everyone who says they hate the snow, and Councillor Radwan, you said that. I will just say that it does moderate the flea and tick and mice population in the spring. So I don't mind 6 good weeks of it, but I'm done with it too after that. Anyway, so those are my comments, Tim, and I do appreciate your work, and I know it's a difficult situation, and I know we're a big city at 315 square kilometers and 600 kilometers of roads, 1,200 lane kilometers for plowing, and all of the sidewalks that go with that. So I know it's a big job, and that we don't have really the population to support that size, but we're trying to do the best we can with the team that we have and the equipment. So thanks very much for tonight. All right, so I'll take a motion for the recommendation. To the budget process? Okay. All right. That sounds, we'll negotiate that later. So Councillor Sullivan is moving the recommendation, investigate budget resource without the increased part he wants on it. So got a seconder on that? Councillor Norton. Well, it's the same, that's up there. It says investigate and adjusting service standards is one, and then investigate resource, and then it's got budget increases. So he doesn't want the budget increases on there.
Yeah.
So referring it to the budget process.
Just timing, right, in terms of the recommendation that come back in alignment with council's considerations for 2026 budget.
Right. Yeah. So we're good? So we got a seconder on that? Okay, Councillor Ogden. And on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, Councillor Lowe, over to you, I think. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Good night, everyone.